Hey everybody, welcome to this special episode of Trad Watch, the last show that we have for the year. Happy final and last Friday in your Advent season. I hope it's been going well for you and that you've been preparing for Christmas coming up next week. Thank you for spending your Friday night with us, and I'm very excited that you're here for this show. We have a great lineup of guests throughout the evening. I think you'll know almost all of them. Many of them are repeat guests on the program, and we'll be talking about quite a bit. First and foremost, what has been the top news over the past year, not only in the church, but also in politics. So we'll have our guests' opinions on all of that. And then looking ahead to 2026, can't believe that. That's come around out of nowhere. Thanks be to God, we made it through this past year, but we'll be looking ahead to what's coming up in 2026. I hope you're excited for it as much as I am. But it's been quite the year, really a tumultuous year. But again, thanks to God that we made it through. I'm looking forward to talking to all of you tonight, as well as our guests. And if you have any chats, drop them in the conversation here, and I'll do my best to get through those. Flying solo tonight. We don't have a producer here at Cox News. It's just us. We're on a shoestring budget. But I've always said content is king. All the fancy programming and all the smells and bells that other programs might have. Where they have that, we have the truth. And we have been speaking up on that for the last 4 months only, if you can believe it. It's only been 4 months. It seems longer, I think. Greetings to Father. Thank you for being here this Friday night. And thanks to you all, again, for being here. This show would not be anything without, obviously, you all for tuning in and supporting the program with the Super Chats and everything else you're doing in supporting myself. It really means a lot. 8,000 viewers, 8,000 subscribers, actually, in 4 months, it seems, is where we're at. So I'm told that's a pretty good rate. So thanks be to God that we've been having the success that we have. And of course, again, the success really means just spreading the word. And that comes from all of you watching the program, spreading the word to your friends at your churches and elsewhere, and tuning in to all of our big shows, which I hope you've really been enjoying as much as I have the past 4 months. Of course, we never planned on doing this show. It seemed to me that the traditional movement was, had its head screwed on a bit more straight than it was, obviously, now. Over the past, 4 months, we've seen 13, 14 years go by since the resignation, so-called, of Benedict, and a lot of Latin masters over the past 13, 14 years. We're saying a lot of good things, but, it's sort of collapsed now. And really all that's left is a bunch of rubble. And we're trying our best here to really pick up the pieces and to be a voice crying out. And with your support, very graciously, we've been able to, I think, do that in many ways. So yes, thank you, Christopher. It's been very kind of you to say that. Thanks so much. Yeah, thank you for tuning in tonight. It's been a great pleasure. Thanks for listening to the Ann Barnhart show. That was an hour and a half of Ann basically on caffeine. And that's how she runs. So that was a really high octane show. And I saw a lot of people were interested in that. So again, we'll have on a lot of guests on this program that are going to come from a wide area of the traditional movement. I mean, you're going to have people on this program. Even in the next year, I look forward to having these conversations with people who, might not share all the same views as I do. We did do a really good, I thought, roundtable with Anthony Abate, Catholic Esquire, as well as Kevin Davis, who will be joining the program and fairly soon here. And I thought it was a good conversation, and we need to have those conversations because that's not going to happen on the mainstream trad platforms when, in fact, they're the ones who should be having these conversations. So we hope more of those will happen and that more guests will come on. Again, we're trying to be as nonpartisan as we can, if you will. Hopefully our guest lineup for the next year will be even better, if you can imagine that. I mean, we've already had on Bishop Sanborn. We had on the Transalpine Redemptorists. We had on So many other guests again that escaped me. It's been a crazy year. We've had a lot of different guests, and hopefully we can continue to expand the list. Julius Smetona, that was a great program, I think, too. A lot of people really enjoyed that one. Dr. Mazza came on and talked about the various topics he was interested in. So I think in the next year we'll talk about, obviously, sedevacantism, continue to push the envelope with that question. And also have on guests, again, that really, I think, will have good areas of expertise. I know there's a lot of people asking me to have on Father Maudsley, to get on Gary Guthrie, to talk about the Cardinal Siri theory, the 1958 conclave. It's all fine with me. And we'll have on some other substackers who I think are really keen to this space as well, to talk about a lot of different areas too. Because again, we're just jumping into this. I mean, guys, I've only been here for 4 months. I know there's a lot of critics, some people who say, "Who are you? You're an infiltrator." I mean, there's some, you can really spin out of reality very quickly in this space, it seems to me, because everything that some of these people are saying is absolutely bonkers. None of it's true. Just a trad guy who wants to help the church in these times. And I would never planned on this program. Again, there was some chaos that happened earlier this year. Obviously, with LifeSite News, you guys kind of know the story. Full transparency, yes, I am doing an occasional podcast over there and writing occasionally for LifeSite. So, that's nothing should be too shocking. But, times are changing overall in the traditional movement, and we hope to continue to help make a difference. And if you don't believe me, hey, what can I do? I'm only just a human being. Thank you for the tree. Yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it? I don't know if it's Charlie Brown. It's not that bad, but yeah, that's I had to get that in tonight. It was actually over on the far side of the space here. I wanted to put that in tonight, obviously. And a lot of decorations there, ornaments. Some are from my sister who passed in 2024, excuse me, February 9, 2024. So pray for my sister Teresa. She had a medical emergency back then, and very sad. But so this is the second Christmas we'll have without her. But we continue to survive on that. In any case, it seems like some of our guests are actually coming on, and I want to just bring them on right away, because this is going to be a long evening, and I want to get to as many topics as possible. So I want you guys to welcome to the show Kevin Davis, as well as the Catholic Esquire. Gentlemen, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. How are you?
This is great. I mean, we got multiple continents going. I thought, Esquire, you might wear some Christmas color here. You're black and white. Are you going to a funeral? What's going on here, man?
I got a little red on. I got a little red. It's all good.
Where? I can't see it. Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah. Nice. Okay. Well, thanks for being here, guys. I kind of want to talk about. So first of all, Esquire, you were like blown away by the fact that Kevin was raised sedevacantist last time we were on. The program.
Yeah, I've never met a cradle sedevacantist before. It was totally great. So I was happy to meet Kevin and
Colorado, right?
Yeah. And let's think about it. I mean, there weren't before 1958. There weren't any sedevacantists. So the fact you have people, the cradle sedevacantists. I mean, it's still kind of a new thing. I mean, not maybe at least our age or whatever. So it's good. Yeah. But a lot of people in the sedevacantist community, I have noticed, have also at one point in time were Novus Ordo Catholics or were SSPX or whatever. So I think even Mario was Mario ever?
Yeah.
He Novus Ordo at one point, or
he
something?
was. He was Novus Ordo and then SSPX. It's hard to believe, right? And then SSPX for a short time. And then Sede, in his early 20s, I think it was. And but it's interesting because, I mean, obviously, I'm very fortunate in my wife's family as well, coming from our grandparents. Both of them were traditional Catholics, sedevacantists, and they left. So her grandfather, my grandfather, both, as the story goes, pretty much stood up during a Novus Ordo Mass and said, "Nope, enough, we're out." And that's kind of it. And so then my mom was probably then 5 or 6 years old. So she's practically a cradle Sede as well. So I'm almost second generation cradle Sede.
Wow. What were you, Stephen? Were you Novus Ordo at one point too?
Oh yeah, I was born and raised Novus Ordo. We had I went to a school now that we had some nuns in the 1990s. They still wore their habits. They were like probably 85. Sister Frances Marie, I actually wrote about her in my book St. Alphonsus for 21st Century, if I can plug that. And she was they were pretty strict. I mean, all things considered in the 90s. I mean, they didn't hit you with rulers then, like they used to, as they probably still should. But no, I mean, we went to that school. It's called Sacred Heart of Jesus. Now it's an academy. So it was actually now it's the only Latin mass, like an adult, in the diocese, and now it's an academy where they teach Latin, and there are some nuns there, so it's like a Latin. They teach Latin. A lot of grads from Hillsdale College, so that's like kind of actually like I was having this conversation with TLM Ryan, which I know you really liked, Catholic Esquire, and he was saying how traditional churches are bucking the trends when it comes to small families, etc. And that's one of those places in the diocese. So I was raised in that sort of milieu. I went to Catholic high school and local Catholic liberal arts college. Then went to Chicago for Loyola, which there's a joke. Loyola is a Jesuit school. And what's the difference between a Protestant and a Jesuit is that the Protestant knows they're not Catholic. So that's the situation.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Hey, Kevin, have you ever been to a Novus Ordo mass before?
I haven't. I've seen a few here in Europe while I was visiting cathedrals or whatnot. I saw one in Prague, and that one actually really surprised me. Matt, I'm working on a book. I'm working on one. I've been working on one for about 10 years, but I'm still working on it. I was in Prague and visiting the Infinite Prague statue, and just praying in front of the statue, and they had it for kind of by luck, they had an English mass going on. And I was really just struck by how, I mean, it was so fast. I just said, wait a second, what just happened? Type of it's like, wait, they just started, and now is it communion? It's communion already? I mean, it's like 5 minutes in. And I seriously I was trying not to pay attention because I'm here for the miraculous statue, but I couldn't really help it. But I was pretty shocked. I ain't gonna lie. I mean, I've gone my entire life to the Latin Mass. My first 15 years were pre-1955, which is the old liturgy, older liturgy, I suppose. There's obviously older than that, but and so very, very, traditional, very solemn, very Latin. And just even one time to see that English Novus Ordo I'm not going to lie, it was fairly shocking.
Do we need to play the Gather Us In hymn again that we did last time? we can revisit all this if we need.
That was a big hit.
It was.
PTSD for sure. I kind of want to let's kind of move into some more like serious topics on like what is the top story, maybe top one or two for you guys this year. I mean, Trad Inc., the collapse of Trad Inc., to me, that is the big one. That obviously the Zip It comment by Michael Matt, we just cannot let that go. It's so damning. But I'll turn it over to you guys because you've been watching all this as close as I have. Kevin, you're over there in Europe, so I'll give you first dibs here just because I want to.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, in my mind, the biggest thing is that we got Leo the 14th, and he's just as liberal or just as modernist as Francis. I think I was not real sure. when he got elected, I was kind of like, whoa, an American. I didn't know him. I'm not going to lie. I didn't know about him at all. So I was kind of going to it blind. And I think that was really what surprised me is that he doesn't have the nastiness that Bergoglio had, but he has the sliminess though. Just straight up open, just openly heretical and it doesn't really hide it. And honestly, to me, that's been the biggest thing because I didn't know what to expect. I really went into it as like, oh boy, is he going to be a Benedict? Is it going to be kind of this really, really smooth, smoothly going back like Benedict was? But no, it's pretty much just the same. I mean, blessing gay marriages and, having his airplane interviews that have there's scandal every week. I mean, Mario Dirksen, Novus Ordo Watch is just constantly busy. I just checked his website and he just got article after article of the scandals that this man has had on the throne of St. Peter. And I think that's to me the biggest story. I'm kind of cheating because it's fairly obvious, but I am surprised at how modernist he has been. So that would have to be my number one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would. I mean, in the church side. So on the church side, I mean, definitely the death of Francis, Leo. On the secular side, I think the biggest story clearly is the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting, I think the parallels between both situations is that with Leo, as you mentioned, Stephen, it triggered like immediately, like the breakdown of Trad Inc. Like rapidly quick, and all of a sudden, all these fault lines started opening that may have been suppressed over the last 13 years. Mm-hmm. Shockingly fast. I mean, literally overnight with Taylor Marshall. I mean, it was just like in front of our eyes. Yeah. What happened to that guy overnight? And then with Charlie Kirk, that sort of is now leading to the breakup of MAGA. I mean, it's blowing up the MAGA movement. And there's just as much infighting, or whatever you want to call it, division over on that side of the aisle as well. So I thought those were the two big stories, church side and non-church side.
Yeah, Father Nix issued a tweet. I'm not going to find it because there's not two of me. I can't bilocate just yet. But he said what the Kirk shooting did to the conservative movement, Leo has done to the trad movement, and it's revealed these fissures where everyone reacts differently. And because Kirk was in a unique space. I mean, he obviously was funded by Turning Point, big Zionist, evangelical, but then later in his life, he's starting to question all of that. And then now that whole thing's blown up. And I plan on talking about this later with Dave Riley and American Reform. They'll come on a little after the 8 o'clock hour. We just saw Ben Shapiro at the Turning Point USA event, which he wasn't invited to, in fact, originally. And he basically is trying to cancel Tucker Carlson. And then we also saw at the White House this scandalous event with President Trump and Miriam Adelson basically stating that she owns him to the tune of $250 million. And so, and that same thing is going on over here with all of us. Like, we're just trying to react to and fill that space that previously everybody, writing books about infiltration and now zipping it and saying we obey. Like, that's the same exact thing that's happened on the other side. So
I tell you what, though, I mean, I see the glimmer of hope from all of this, that I think that the younger generation, the Gen Z, especially the men, the women, maybe a different story, but the men are really kind of sick of it. And I think regarding politics, regarding, the issues in the church, I think they all really see it as nonsense now. And I think a lot of these young men are even getting off the internet, which in some ways is good, some ways is bad. I mean, I hope that if they're on the internet, they're watching shows like this or going over to Cox News. But I think that there is going to be a shift towards tradition, at least with a chunk of these men. And I think that the strange thing is that I think you had several generations that were, especially here in Germany, I can tell you it's even worse here in Germany, that they're just, wishy-washy. They have no real belief in anything, really. They're just they're here, they live, they vote, but, they always vote the CDU, the Anglo-American Party. They don't really believe in anything, really. But I think that the newer generations believe strongly in something. So especially here in Germany, they're either tree huggers or they're really actually looking for truth. They're actually looking for the Latin Mass, and they're saying, hey, what is going on in Rome and all this different stuff it's ridiculous. And I've talked to some of these young men. We just had a young man from Munich join our parish, 21 years old, came to State of Acontism, came to the traditional Latin Mass through just wanting to find truth. He came to it, he's kind of politically upset, and he's kind of looking for, he decided, okay, God is real. Okay, what is God, and how do I love him and know him? And okay, the Catholic Church. And then eventually you find that the only way the Catholic Church can be real and can be true is if you find, a true Catholic Church, not what is happening right now in Rome. So it's interesting to see. So I think, again, you do see a lot of fracturing, but I think after that fracture, I think you're going to see some things start to grow from the whatever came from the broken Humpty Dumpty, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is the more I think about this, I'm like, no, this really is something that kind of needed to happen. I think a lot of these fissures were covered over because everyone kind of agreed Francis was a major problem. And a lot of people were like, well, clearly he's not Catholic. I mean, it's so unbelievably obvious that no one could really disagree with it. But yeah, when Leo came around, all of a sudden people thought, oh, we're going to go back to some utopia from Pope Benedict, who was also a modernist. And there were a few people who were like, no, listen to what he's telling you. He's just as modernist as everybody else. He's promoting synodality. He's promoting all these environmental issues, everything else. He's Francis 2.0. And I came out with a video immediately after the election and said that. Yeah. He's Francis 2.0. And Trading, oh no, you have to give him a chance. I'm like, yeah, that's why.
Well, one of these groups that is, I mean, there are a number of other stories too. I think the LGBT pilgrimage in the Vatican, obviously that was a big one. I think the Durban remarks too. That was a big mask off moment for everybody, because I remember when that happened, Marshall put out a video, said, "Okay, I've been playing the wait and see game. This is different now." But I think we're gonna need like 10 more of those for Taylor to actually kind of click, because he's like still reverting back to, well, I gotta keep waiting. But so my point is though, one group of trads who are now sort of coalescing is the Pelican Plus movement. And, there's been a lot of commentary on them. And I have said, look, I don't think in principle, Catholics getting together and having a shared platform space is bad at all. I mean, I agree in general that, it's better for us to own, the means of production, etc., instead of going off and working for, like as they're doing at the Daily Wire, right? Awful, despicable. They cannot do that. What do you guys make of Pelican Plus? Am I wrong to maybe have that view? I mean, I don't subscribe to them. I'm not going to. I just don't like that business model. Like, sign up here, even if it's a free account. I'm just not going to do it. I'm sorry, I'm lazy. If that makes me lazy, I'm just not going to do it. Like, your content should be free, and people should help you if they like it. I don't know. I have a queasy feeling about the whole model itself.
Getting money from producing Catholic material as laymen, I think they're primarily laymen, and do they have the approval of their ordinary? I mean, they still believe in the Pope, right? So, I mean, they do actually have people above them juridically, and yet they're teaching. They're not just teaching the Catholic faith, even though they are opposing the Pope, even though they say he's the Pope. They're also then asking you to pay $25 a month for that process. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I think paywalls in general I never sign up ever. I mean, it's just like, I'll get other material from somewhere else. So even if I did like them, I wouldn't sign up anyway. But I just think, as you say, Stephen, I think if you're going to do this kind of thing, I think it has to be with like free will type of stuff, some sort of donations and whatnot. Because otherwise it gets really icky. And, and I think with my podcast, we make almost nothing. I would love to make more. Anyone who wants to go donate on Patreon, that'd be great. I mean, I have 3 young kids, so, I would love more money, guys. But, if it turns into something where I have to do it for money, or I have sponsors or whatever, then, who knows what I'm going to have to be talking about, or what I can't talk about anymore. Maybe I'm talking about something, my sponsors come in and say, hey, Kevin, don't say that about the Jews or the Muslims or whatever. And it's a dangerous game to play. And so I'm happy where we're at. And I think the way you guys do it, I think, the journalistic approach where you're going and you're trying to just tell the truth how it is, and you hope people will support you. I think that's a risk. I think you're obviously sticking your neck out, but God bless you for it. I think that's the way it's got to be. And I think I'm with you, Stephen. It makes me queasy.
Yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable with the whole concept as well. I mean, I don't blame people for wanting to try to make a living and stuff like that, but I agree that having lay people make money off of the church and teaching theology and then asking for payment for it, that kind of stuff. Like, one of the things I always try to do is I never try to teach theology. I mean, the most I ever do will quote like from the catechism, right? Because that's not really, look, I'm just quoting from the catechism, and I can see this craziness coming out of the church. And so I'm just saying, okay, well, this is contrary to what we always know of the faith. But that's not really teaching so much the faith, and I try to stay away from that because as a layman, I'm really not qualified to go deep down into those things. What I am qualified to do is talk about what I see coming out of Rome. I am qualified to talk about how politics works because I've been in that milieu before. I know how politics works and trickery works and deception. And so I can talk about those things and then kind of apply it to what I see in the church. So I think there's a difference there. I don't know how that, I mean, I understand the thought process behind Pelican Plus, but I agree. I'm not terribly comfortable with the concept, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, I'm definitely interested to see what happens and how that works out, because if it is successful, I think that you're probably going to see more of that from perhaps other outlets too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think back and I look at like what Michael Davies wrote. I'm grateful for a lot of things he wrote as just a student of history. And I'm grateful he wrote his book on the Second Vatican Council, and as well as the multiple volumes. And I don't agree with Michael Davis on everything, but I think there is room for lay people to for sure do things. I mean, I wrote a book on St. Alphonsus. I mean, if I could say that, and I don't pretend to be like, okay, I'm the expert on St. Alphonsus. I only wrote it to sort of share my experience and maybe highlight some key teachings of his that I thought were relevant to my life. So yeah.
No, I think, and that's, I think there is a difference there. There is a difference between history, obviously, talking about history of the church. Those are all, I think, fair game for lay people and that sort of thing. But when you start getting into giving people spiritual advice and that sort of stuff, and teaching people, I don't know, it's a fine line. I get it, but there's just a little bit, some of it makes me uncomfortable.
No, I agree with you though. I think there are certainly things you can do as lay people. What do we all do? I mean, I have a podcast that does a lot of that stuff, but I think it's more if you're commenting on something that someone else says, writing a book about a saint. I don't think that's the same as saying, here's what you need to believe that Rome is saying, or whatever it is. And I think that there is a distinction, but I wanted to comment real quick, if that's okay. But Stephen, you mentioned about Vatican, going back to Vatican II, and I wanted before we have to leave here, I just wanted to bring that up, partly to plug my own podcast, but I think that so much of this, all of these issues go back to Vatican II. I really think that's something that if anyone's watching this, that's something I really cannot say enough. That Esquire mentioned earlier, Benedict was also a modernist. They all were, because they all stem from Vatican II. And Prevost is truly, as Bergoglio, a son of Vatican II. And I think that's really something that I highly recommend. As you see here, thank you, Stephen, for that. The Louis Verrecchio series we've been doing, I shouldn't even say we. It's really all Louis. Louis does all the work. He goes into these documents of Vatican II, and I mean, with a fine comb, and he's really looking into the actual wording of the Second Vatican Council and just tearing it apart. And so if you want to know why Rome has the theology it has now, why it does the things it does, guys, you got to watch this series. And it's not even just to plug my podcast. I want you just to hear it. I mean, if Louis publishes it on his own channel, awesome. Like, it's just really good material that he spent so much time on. And he's a real expert of the Second Vatican Council. So it all goes back to that. And it's amazing when you watch the series. When I've gotten to talk with them, just the things that they actually wrote at Vatican II it's pretty shocking when you get it in context.
Yeah, I'll second that. I mean, I've been listening to that series, Kevin. It's fantastic. It's so good. Because the mantra is as well, and they're still saying it. Well, it's just the spirit of Vatican II that's bad. There's nothing wrong with the text. There's nothing wrong with the documents. It's really good. Some of them go so far to say they're beautiful documents. I'm like, they're not beautiful documents. This is gobbledygook if you can understand it. And when you do pick it apart and actually figure it out, like Louis does on your show, Kevin, you realize, like, wow, this is not Catholic at all. But you have to dive into it, and people just don't generally want to do that. And when you do, and you kind of get a little context, I like how Louis gives you a little context, because you have to have it. that kind of fills in sort of the gap, like to understand what they're trying to do there. It's good stuff. So yeah, congrats on that series. It's really good.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks to Louis. I got to shout him out again, akacatholic.com, guys. That's my good friend Louis Brecchio. I think Stephen won't mind me doing that. He's an awesome guy and putting a lot of good work into it.
But Vatican II, and that's why I'm really kind of going to be focused myself, and I think we really do have to focus on Vatican II, because that's the fault line. That's the fault line right now we're seeing. Maybe I know the Sedevacantist will want to make the fault line whether there's Pope or not, but to me, the fault line is Vatican II, because everything stems from that. Everything, all the revolution in the church stems from that. The bad teachings from people who claim to be the Pope after Vatican II stem from that. And it really is the core of the division, I think, right now in Trad Inc. After Leo. Yeah.
Yeah, you renamed this the American Vendée Network. That term is often used by others in this space. But I think, as you're saying here, this has to be counter-revolutionary. When we say that term, we have to actually mean counter-revolutionary, and Vatican II is the revolution. So, we can't be making peace with modernists and shaking hands and just saying, hey, we just want our Latin masses. No, we're fighting for the doctrine. We have to be like those Vendée who said, no, we're not going to take that oath to the Masonic Republic. So how can we sit here and play footsie with these modernists? I've always called them usurpers in the Vatican. So I think that's a great title.
It really does. Yeah, and it is. It is counter-revolutionary, and the revolution was Vatican II, which itself has its roots actually also in the French Revolution. Mm-hmm. There's a consistent lineage there, and you can trace it and follow it. And
yeah, you took a flamethrower to the Thanksgiving, man. You were a lot of people were crying after that one.
Well, yeah, yeah, no, I did. Yeah, everything is just riddled with we live in a completely revolutionary space. You can't get out of it. It's in the air we breathe everywhere. It's infected every aspect of our lives. It's infected the church. It's infected our politics. It's infected the culture. Mm-hmm. It's all revolution. It's all rejection of Jesus Christ. That's the ultimate, really, what it comes down to. On the secular side, on the church side, all of it has the common root, and the common root is rejecting Jesus Christ and his social kingship of Christ. Yep. And that's why all this stuff not only matters, but it's all connected. So that's what I'm going to try to focus on more next year, is kind of making those connections, and maybe let others focus on all the bad stuff coming out of the Vatican every day. I can't keep up with it. It's too much.
Well, Kevin, somebody asked in the chat not long ago, you're over there in Germany or Austria? Where are you at?
Germany, near Austria, but in Germany.
I mean, what are things like these days? I know the AfD is actually quite popular. In fact, it's the most popular party, but they're sort of seemingly the other coalitions are preventing its rise. And somebody asked actually specifically at the Christmas markets, there's now protections to make sure like terrorists aren't doing crazy things. I mean, talk about revolution, like post-Vatican II Europe is a wasteland of, invaders and apostates, really.
Yeah, I mean, I live in paradise, so I live in really in the middle of the Alps, so I don't experience that on a daily basis. You don't see Arabs walking around my little town. I mean, it's as my parents would say, they're PLUs, they're people like us, and so which is nice. And we pretty much live in the Alps, and we go to our little parish in a little village outside of Munich. So my daily life, I don't see any of that, but I have gone recently to cities like Munich, and there it really stands out. And it really stands out that there aren't so many PLUs. It is really becoming an Arab nation, and it's scary. I like pretty legitimately. I mean, especially some of these cities you go to. If you go to Stuttgart or Ulm, some of these, and I'm sure even worse if you go up north or east. And it really is like you walk through, especially like the train stations, and I mean, even as a pretty big grown guy, it's kind of like, shoot, man, I could get blown up right now. And it is. And I know maybe that's racist or something, but sorry, guys, that's how I feel. And so, man, I can't even imagine being like a young woman. You can't walk by yourself in a city or something. I mean, it's not safe anymore. The good thing is I just saw a report, I think today or yesterday that again, as you say, Stephen, AFD is getting bigger. It's certainly getting more acceptable to be anti-immigration. And the young people, again, are kind of waking up and saying like, hey, no, look, no, like we don't want this. We don't want to become an era of the country. And I think it is going to change. I think that you're going to slowly see a change. I think what's the election now? It's another 3 years or so, but they might call early elections again because the government is pretty bad and not really united. They're united against the AFD, but I think eventually they're not going to be able to stop it. The AFD is going to get enough people in parliament, and I think they're going to make some changes. There's a lot writing on it. I mean, like for me, for example, that in Germany it's illegal to homeschool. So I hope, certainly that within the next 10 years that AFD gets in and we can petition to get rid of that Hitlerian law, literally. But it's dark right now. But I do think that we've seen the darkest days. I do think it is going to get better.
Yeah, it's interesting to comment on that because I was just doing a show with some colleagues at LifeSite, and Gen Z definitely is unafraid to discuss all those topics and to really push back and to say, here's the future, here's the problem, and here's what we need to make so the future is sustainable. Actually, so Europe survives, so America survives. But the problem I've had always with the Gen Z, I'll just use the term generally as the groypers here, is that their view of Vatican II is, well, it's like continuity, right? That it's not as bad as it is made out to be. Ratzinger, okay, maybe he was not great at the council, but he turned out to be a pretty good pope. He liberated the Latin Mass, etc. So, like, it seems to me they see the problems in the culture and politics, but religiously and in the church, they're not connecting the dots.
I guess that's our job then to help them connect them. Sorry, Esquire. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's basically what I was just going to say. It's like, right. I mean, that's why I think we can't just say, well, Vatican II's in the past. It'll just die off on its own pretty soon. I've heard people say that a lot of the Trad Inc. guys say, no one will even remember Vatican II in 20 years. Who cares? It's not a big deal. I'm like, what people believe to be the Catholic Church today is completely based on what happened at Vatican II. And so what's gradually happening, if you just let this go, is not that Vatican II is going to get forgotten, but what happened before Vatican II is going to be forgotten. And that the people who remember or know what happened before end up in these little little communities or little bubbles or whatnot. And they're going to be just viewed as weirdos or whatever. And what we need to do is make real Catholicism the mainstream again. And I think the only way to do that, because we're so outnumbered at this point, is just keep continuing to talk about it, not let up on it, never let it go, and just keep that out there, because the truth will win out. People are going to see truth. Truth will always win out. But if no one's out there talking about the truth, then no one will know it, and it will die out. So
yeah, it seems like the mainstream view or the way they're going to handle Vatican II is to say, and I've heard this before, Vatican II is a failed council, or it was just a mistake. Eventually, the church will self-correct. But I don't. It's not going anywhere. I mean, we just had this new guy from Chicago named the Ordinary of New York, right? This Hicks guy. And, he's a product of the conciliar religion. I mean, he talks like he's very effeminate. He was picked by Supich. The council's not going anywhere. And I was talking with TLM Ryan about that on the program. And I thought it was a great program. I'm not poo-pooing it. But his final conclusion, statistically speaking, in terms of, retention rate, in terms of family size, it's down to like 1.5 kids for Novus Ordo families. The tracking isn't gonna crash for like another 60 years. I mean, so it's going to take a long time. So, even if trads continue to grow as much as we are, and I'm talking just all types of trads, I guess, it's going to take decades. And the actual solution to me seems that Vatican II, everything that came after it has to be annulled, canceled, voided, whatever you want to call it, burned documents in St. Peter's Square. Like, we can't just say it was so benign. You know, it was evil. I mean, it was a sinister occupation, and it's lasted to the present day.
But here's the other thing, Stephen. I'll leave you with this because I got to get running here. But this is what you and I have been talking about. Chris Jackson's been talking about the whole time, is that, okay, even the traditionalists at traditional at mass, they're still imbibing the Vatican II poison. And if you go back and think about all the stuff we've seen in the last year, I kind of made a list here just to think about it. I mean, you have people who call themselves traditionalists. They're promoting and talking about the reality of space aliens. They're promoting and talking about the problems with Vatican I. They're talking about that. They are totally pro-feminist. They are they're just in this complete meltdown, and all of these things and the all that occultism, right? That Chris Jackson, remember that series Chris Jackson did with against
magic and stuff,
magic.
I don't understand all that.
And hermeticism and all of that stuff. It's like
very bizarre.
This is part of the traditional movement. And so that's why, you know, this isn't just like Novus Ordo. You still have this problem, even if all the Novus Ordo masses die out, which you know, like you said, if that happens, it's not going to be for a while. It's probably only going to get worse. So I'll leave you with that thought. But those are just some of the things that came out last year, part of that whole fault line stuff we saw. So.
Well, before you go, Esquire, I have to say, Father Carlos Cepeda is over there in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, part of the CMRI. So I promise you will not see any magic or anything like that at his parish. So there are traditional groups where you don't really see this type of nonsense. They have their own problems, maybe their own fights, etc. But I think that there's a lot of growth. I see a lot of hope, and as Stephen says, it's slow and it's going to be slow. But I think there is hope. I think there is. You see, you know, in my groups, like the CMRI, that you see a lot of young sisters, a lot of nuns, a lot of priests, a lot of young seminarians. I think that there is a growing movement, but it's compared to the rest of the world, it's pretty glacial, but it's moving.
No enchantment, no fairies, and
no, sir.
And no trolls running around over in Wheat Ridge. Okay, good to know.
No.
Thank you, gentlemen. It was great talking to you.
Have a good Christmas. Thank you. That's a lot. All right, great. Well, Kevin, down to 2 here. Yeah, great. Thanks. What is it? So tell me, what else does your family do around Christmas time? Is everybody over in Germany there? Do you have family? I think you said your brother is a priest. I mean, what are some family traditions you guys do for Christmas?
Well, all of my family is still in the U.S. Most of them are based near Omaha or Spokane, so kind of CMRI centers. I have a brother who's a priest, two sisters who are nuns. Wow, my wife's family is over here, and so it's kind of cool because we are able to kind of split the traditions. So we do some German traditions, we do some American ones. I mean, Germany has some interesting Catholic traditions because Germany already started I got to be careful how I say this. Germany started to change some things regarding liturgy and whatnot even before the rest of the world. Before Vatican II, they got some indults and whatnot. And so one of the things that they've done for, I don't know, maybe 100 years, maybe more, I'm not sure, that they celebrate Christmas on the 24th, so in the evening. Okay. So they don't have, they end their fast after Vespers, and then they open gifts and whatnot then. So I'm full-blooded American. That kind of really rubs me the wrong way. I'm not gonna lie. I fight with all my friends every year about the German traditions, but some of them are also very nice. But so because we are here and we live next to my in-laws, the children are allowed to then kind of do both. They get to kind of celebrate a little bit on December 24th, open a few gifts, but then the big Christmas is in the morning. And this year we'll go to midnight mass. So we have not, as a family, gone to midnight mass because with babies we were a little afraid, but we're going to try it this year, and I think that'll kind of help to help set the tone for Christmas. to be there at midnight, and then we'll have a little feast after mass at our little parish house, and drink some mulled wine, eat some sausage probably, and then then head home and have another gift opening. So it's a little different, but it's nice.
I want to play this. Is this
cities? Yeah, you're right. It's different, and it's really, really tragic. I mean, truly tragic. I'm a big fan of Germany, of Europe. I love the history. I'm a big history buff, and so to think about, especially about the Crusades, and to think about this history and what our forefathers did and what they fought for, what they fought against, and then to be now in our times where they are just like, yeah, we don't want a culture. We hate our culture. We hate ourselves. We hate Christianity. We hate the Western civilization. That's our leadership.
Right.
And it's terrible. And that is truly, I'm not a black pillar, but man, if there's anything that black pills me, that is it. Because our leadership here in Europe, especially, has truly just, they've given up. They are traitors. They have given the country over to people who hate us, who hate our religion. They hate our way of life. And at times they want to kill us. And so I hope that again, the politics change and we kick him out, and we'll see. I mean, I guess everyone pray for Europe, because I think it does matter. I know America's a little safer, but it's a problem there too.
Yeah. If everybody in the chat, you have any questions for myself or Kevin, please do drop them in. I see there's some good conversations taking place. I'm trying to keep track of them, but can't get all of them up. I know there's some good conversations taking place there. So please, if you want us to read something and to talk about something, let us know. I think I'm going to take a quick break for our sponsor tonight is Florida Low Carb Direct Primary Care. Great nutritional Catholic organization here, run in the U.S. by a doctor really, who goes to the traditional Latin Mass. Florida Low Carb is operated in the state of Florida. They recognize the social kinship of Christ and understands the human body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, and that the human body can be helped by proper medicine, but also proper dietary and lifestyle choices. So for less than just a couple cups of coffee a day, you can have access to their services here. They do telehealth as well as other services too. So if you're not in Florida, don't worry about that. Be sure to visit Florida Low Carb Direct Primary Care, and I'll put the link in the description. So thank you for our sponsor tonight. That's Dr. Naveen. You can call him at 904-478-9669 or email Florida Low Carb DPC at protonmail.com. And I'll put all that in the details for the show later. In any case,
shameless plug. I also have a podcast with Dr. Naveen. Very, very interesting man. Really smart guy. Where we talked about faith and the full meat diet. What's it called? The carnivore diet. So pretty interesting. Really, really interesting guy. He's one. If you get the chance to interview, I highly recommend it. Very, very intelligent.
Yeah, we've been talking on the phone. I'll even bring up the interview. I'll give him an extra plug here. Dr. Naveen's brilliant. He runs it. And here's you guys from a couple of years ago, maybe, I think. Just 1 year ago. Dr. Naveen, brilliant man, and understands the crisis in the church. So for sure, I think that's obviously the next battle as this is all taking place is, we're just being poisoned with our awful food and everything. It's clearly being put into the food for a purpose to treat us with, they get us sick with food, and then we'll have to run to the crappy doctors who just push pills on you from the pharmaceutical, and you never get healthy.
Yeah, sure. And that's a nice thing in Germany that it actually fortunately is better. That they do treat people more holistically. They try to treat you first with herbals and, hey, go home and take a nap type of a thing, which is better. I think it's just part of the healthcare system here is just not so determined on what do you call it? You're getting kickbacks or whatever. So if the doctor sells a certain amount of things, it's not the same. It's not as capitalistic as America. And I think if there's anything I can say politically that I really recommend everyone, and I mean everyone, Americans, everybody else, travel and see other countries, because I think it will open your eyes a little bit to the idea that maybe everything your country does is not just the golden rule. Some things America does is great. Some things it does is not. And same in Germany. And I think that's something that it's worth seeing the world to understand that better.
Well, Kevin, here's a message here. Kevin's wife is German, and they're living there near her family. Yep, understand that.
Oh, someone's helping out. Yeah, exactly.
Like, God bless Kevin's wife for letting him stay up so late. So,
she didn't care. I actually went to bed. I went to bed and then I got up and I'll go back to bed here again and sleep a couple hours. But my wife's pretty used to it. She fussed me out because I get up lately to watch American football because my Broncos are really good and they play oftentimes really late. Yeah. And so I get up Monday mornings. Typically, I'm pretty exhausted. And my wife was like, what are you doing? You're getting up. You're staying up late again. I was like, it's with Stephen Cox. And she's like, okay, that's fine. Okay. She appreciated it. She knew it was Stephen Cox. So she's like, all right. Well, I'll allow it.
I'm your get out of jail card here. So.
Exactly. So next time, Stephen, next time I got to watch football, let's just have a conversation, so that I can do both maybe at the same time, not get in trouble.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I appreciate you for coming on. I enjoy your podcast with Matthew. It's really enjoyable. You guys have some good conversations and good banter. So keep that up. And yeah, thanks for joining. Have a good Christmas. And
thank you, sir.
Talk to you after the New Year.
Yeah, let's do it again. And let's do another panel sometime. That was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. We will do that. Thanks, Kevin.
Awesome. I have Merry Christmas.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us. We got about another hour and a half left. We're going to do a marathon here. So we got the Christmas tree. We got our bottled water here. We're going strong. We're going to bring on our next guest in just a moment here. Again, thank you for being with us. If you want to make a donation, you can obviously go to our links in the description. End of your donations are obviously welcomed. If you want to do some super chats tonight, that's great. Thank you for that. And of course, just put your comments in the comment section here. I'll try to get to those as best as we can with our future guests for the next hour and a half. And I want to bring on our next guest. A very special friend of mine, has ties to Chicago, as I did. I went to grad school in Chicago. I want to bring on now Liz Yore. Liz, thank you so much for being here. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm delighted to be with you. Congratulations on this year launching your new podcast and bringing finally some fresh new insight and commentary into the dynamic changes in the church. So it's been, great run for you this year, and you've really hit the ground running. So really kudos to you. And I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to appear again.
Well, that's very kind, Liz. Thank you so much. I mean, you've lent your time to us before. I'm not sure if you know this. I'll try to bring it up on the screen. Your appearance on the podcast the first time, it's the most viewed one we have. It's let's see, 60,000 views and counting right now. So I'll try to bring that up to show people. But I wonder if you have a thought on that, because that was early on in this program's history. And here, I'll bring that up on the screen. Try to zoom in. This was 4 months ago. It was like 2 weeks into the program. Trad Inc. And Leo as Francis 2.0 exposed. I mean, powerful as you get right there. I mean, why do you think that did so well? I mean, or 2 weeks after we launched, everybody wanted it seems.
Well, I think partly it's your headlines, your clickbait, which are so good. And I also think that it, people were very curious about Leo.
Yeah.
And, obviously I don't hold back about my opinion from Chicago. And so I don't know, it was, nice to see, and let's do it again, right?
I know. It's perfect.
This time.
Yeah, I think so. I think, well, on that topic, I mean, I want to get up to speed with what you're doing. And I know you're all over the situation in China, and Jimmy Lai was just found guilty, I believe. Can you update us on that situation, which was just, awful?
Yes, he was, he's the great billionaire magnate convert to the Catholic Church, started Apple Daily, the Freedom Press in Hong Kong. Fascinating story, wonderful and dear close friend with Cardinal Zen and the Catholic Church in Hong Kong. He's been in the crosshairs with the CCP. They are making, in my opinion, an example of him to the world. He's been in jail for, I think, 4 years now. This was the end of a kangaroo trial on the new national security law that he violated supposedly. And so it's in his health. He's a well into his 70s, and his health is really failing in jail, as you can imagine. And I really think we should do a global rosary for not only Jimmy's freedom that he gets released, but also for the underground church in China. Because, personally, I feel that the Vatican threw the underground church, just under the bus. It is getting worse and worse by the minute in China. They are appointing, the CCP is appointing Catholic bishops and cardinals. And so, our greatest fear has happened. So, imagine we have a CCP operative at the conclave, with appointing the new Catholic Pope. I mean, it's just absurd. And
here's what you're talking about. Vatican News: Bishop consecrates for new Chinese diocese created by Leo. So he's working, dialoguing with the communists, but he won't dialogue with the traditionalists.
Nor will he speak out on behalf of Jimmy Lai. And it's not only that they're choosing, if that's not bad enough, cardinals and bishops, they are redefining, they're redistricting the diocese and creating new dioceses. So the actual organizational structure of the Catholic Church in China is being drawn by the atheistic, violent CCP. And we're all sitting around, not all of us, but only a handful are sitting around. Everybody else is watching this happen. And this is the great church of Cardinal Kung, and the thriving Catholic Church in Hong Kong and Shanghai in the 1940s before Mao took over. And these poor people have been, the priests, if they don't join the Patriotic Church, which is the CCP created church, Catholic Church, then they are denied to say mass, can't hear confession, and frankly are sent home to live with their families on the farm in poverty. So it's just an outrageous situation. And I put the blame at the feet of Francis and, of course, his mastermind of the Chinese agreement, the late, not so great Cardinal Ted McCarrick.
Well, even Cardinal Parolin, he seems to be the one who's having a lot of influence there as well. And he was almost, the rumors have been that he was, the front runner leading into the conclave. The first vote allegedly went to him fairly high, 60, 70 maybe, but then they shifted. Leo has kept all of these players in the Vatican the entire time.
That's why he's Francis 2.0. The two highest and worst appointments of Francis, Parolin and Kissy Face Tucho Fernandez, have been kept on for the last 7 months and seem to be really reigning supreme in this pontificate. And you can see in the writings of Leo, they're just very flowery and new agey language, similar to what Tucho wrote in the synodal phase for Francis. And of course, it seems as if Parolin is having just a steady full hand in China on all these world issues. And, he's just not to be trusted. And I can't, we were told there was going to be a shakeup, early on, but of course there wasn't.
Yeah. I want to ask you obviously a lot more questions about all this, but I do see that our next guest has arrived, and I want to bring him on because he's a friend of yours as well. And we all will have roots and connections to Chicago, and that's Father David Nix, who I want to bring to the stage. Father Nix, how are you?
Good. Great to join you both.
Hi, Father.
Hello. Hello again, both of you.
You look like you're in a bunker in China. It's pretty dark over there.
Yeah. This is my little hermitage, and all I got is the light on the halo, the fake halo. I have no real halo. The fake halo above my computer.
You're too modest.
Yes. Oh, yes. I've been telling everyone how humble I am lately.
Well, Father, we were just talking about the situation in China there, as well as Leo keeping on a number of appointees from Leo. Do you have any initial comments on that? Have you been following the story of Jimmy Lai or what's going on overseas there?
I didn't know that was our topic, but I did get a text from a friend of mine who is an Asian Catholic here in the United States. And, she said, Leo's doing the exact same thing as Francis. She asked me to offer mass yesterday for a Jimmy Lai and a Bishop Tai, who apparently is like homeless,
Yes.
wandering the streets.
Yes.
You know that name, Liz?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Okay.
I mean, these bishops and many priests have been disappeared, rounded up, disappeared, tortured. Nobody knows where they are. Some of them, as Father said, wandering around homeless because they won't even allow them to stay in a rectory or even with people. The people, if they offer their home for a priest, they'll get arrested. It's just a nightmare.
Well, I might as well put in the fifth gear from the very start here. I haven't done the new mass in 10 years, but I'm not going to trade in the Latin mass, or I'm not going to ignore the destruction of the church in China just so I can keep my Latin mass like Trad Inc. is doing. I know I'm going from first gear to fifth gear here, but this makes me really, really angry that you have American trads who are willing to, as you say, Stephen, take this, side altar at the conciliar gym mass while we ignore, bishops wandering the streets in China because Leo's doing the exact same thing to them as Francis is. Sorry, but I can't be that I was joking about the halo. I'm no saint, but I'm never going to be that selfish where I'm going to say, I'm going to eke out my own little traditional living, stay silent so you leave me alone, so the Vatican leaves me alone, at the price of me refraining from calling out the heresy and the destruction of the persecuted church in China. No way. Leo's doing the exact same thing as Francis, and this infuriates me. We have people who consider themselves pious who are willing to save their own devotion at the price of persecuted Christians.
Yeah, it's the zip it policy on steroids. I mean, there's so much that's coming out. I mean, I gave a show just the other week. I said, what are we getting excited for, when Leo goes to Istanbul, Constantinople, really, and doesn't pray in a mosque when he just prayed at the Colosseum with the Nostra Aetate event, right? And then when he's doing all the other sorts of things, blessing glaciers and issuing documents that denounce the title of co-redemptrix. I mean, I don't see much to get excited for. There's a continuation, clearly, of the situation that we had before.
Steve, this is
ahead, Liz.
The 7 months of Leo is Francis 2.0, as I said, but I believe in lightning speed. I mean, Bergoglio's in heaven, synodality is dogma, the borders are bad, Mary's not the co-redemptrix, the Catholic Church is erased and replaced with the new synodal church of listening, journeying, dialoguing, and lunching with transsexuals. I mean, it is madness. And personnel is policy. If you look at his personnel choices, you see this as Father Enoch in his book, The Trojan Horse of the Catholic Church, where he talks about what is synodality. Synodality is absolutely the embrace and inclusion of homosexuality, the acceptance of homosexuality into the doctrine and dogma of the church. That's what's going on with the synod process. And Cardinal Mueller was the one to call it out. He's been at the synods. He's seen the documents. He's talked, saw the conversations. That's what's going on. And so when you start looking at the appointments are reflecting this big push to embrace synodality, not only synodality, whatever that is, a made-up name, homosexuality, transgender, the New World Order, climate change, and it's interesting, isn't it? It's all those issues that we're now seeing polls where people like, oh, climate change is a hoax. The whole world is catching on now. Climate change is a hoax. Oh, but the Pope and the Vatican are clinging to it. Transgender mutilation has started to just, skyrocket downward. People are recognizing what a danger this is, and that many of these people are mentally ill and need intervention. Not the Vatican. The Vatican lifts up. In fact, the latest appointment of a bishop, was a bishop. Where was he appointed? Father, was he? I think out in California, And he had previously participated in an LGBT mass, and a transgender spoke a homily at this mass.
That's right. That's right. I think it was Monterey. I think he was just named in
Monterey, California.
South of San Francisco, yeah.
And so, look, I'm from Chicago, the belly of the beast. Father is, anybody who's grew up in Chicago's been weaned on Chicago Democratic politics. And we know that this is the city of the boss, and it's creepily evident that the boss of the American church is Blaise Supich.
That's right.
Nearly all of the appointments have for the bishops and now cardinal have come through Supich. And now we see the important Archdiocese of New York get dealt yet another Supich boy who was inextricably intertwined in the Archdiocese of Chicago. So, I mean, and by the way, anybody who's watching social media tonight, I've been sending you things. I mean, he is getting ripped to shreds by New Yorkers who are looking for a strong, manly leader to lead the Catholic Church that's in New York, which is in in bad shape financially and otherwise. But it's like the funny, we're accepting like, oh, isn't it cool? The Chicago Pope comes out and says, I love the Chicago sports teams. The White Sox are my favorite team, pizza, and everybody goes gaga. Then, the new head of the Archdiocese of New York City comes out and says, oh yeah, I'm a Cubs fan and I love deep dish pizza. And we're all supposed to go, oh, are they cool? Oh boy, the Catholic Church has really arrived, as if, hiding behind sports teams instead of really promoting the Catholic faith and being honest about the scandals and being honest about what needs to be done in the culture and how the Catholic Church will lead the culture out of this modernism. But no, we're talking about the Cubs and the White Sox and deep dish pizza.
That's right.
He likes baseball and pizza. He must be a straight man.
Yeah.
Here's the clip here. I'll bring it up, but just so everybody can be aware of what Liz is talking about.
Let me begin with potentially my first.
This was very cryptic, very awkward.
I'm a Cubs fan, and I love deep dish pizza. That said, I want you to know. Yeah,
I can't even listen to him, honestly. Father, do you have any thoughts on any of all this? I mean, you're from Chicago.
Well, my parents are from Chicago. They met in Denver. I was born and raised. But, I think we have to go back to this topic of the $2.3 billion that the bishops have been receiving. I think it was Chris Jackson. Someone said in an article recently, and I always do the audio, so I mix what I actually read versus actually see. Maybe it was you, Stephen. But, Trump actually deported less people than Obama. So why in the world are USCCB bishops, as well as Leo, hammering Trump's policy so hard? Well, there's only one possibility, and it's the reduction of the funds. Because if it were truly this fear of, the migrants not receiving their rights, why didn't they behave like that under Obama? Well, there's only one possibility due to the numbers of Obama sending more people away than Trump, and it's the money that they received. But let's be honest, there's a lot of good, traditional, even conservative Catholics who don't go to Latin Mass who are mildly critical of the USCCB for these open borders. And, they often point to the brown people raping the white people in this country, and they're right to do that. But I said on the phone to someone today, maybe it was Liz, maybe it was you, my memory's been bad these days, but my memory's good enough to remember this, that 80% of the girls that are brought across the border are raped. So this isn't just brown on white rape. This is brown on brown rape. So the bishops pretending, oh, I'm so not racist because I want open borders. No, you actually are racist because the biggest rape of minorities in this country is due to you bishops opening these borders. So this doesn't make you non-racist. You're actually making sure kids get raped. Does this maybe have something to do with all the cover-ups in the chanceries, in the files of how many priests have raped kids? Maybe there's a little connection on this whole thing. But this new bishop that was just named Archbishop of New York City, he is totally for open borders, meaning he is for the rape of brown kids, right? So let's sideline all of this. Well, maybe he acts a little bit gay, but at least he likes minorities. No, he doesn't. You cannot be fighting for minorities if you are fighting for these open borders. So let's stop this false dichotomy of we have the trad white people fighting for American citizens in the Latin Mass, and then you have like the liberal bishops who are looking out for the minorities and the immigrants. It's just not true. They are mad that they lost their funding, and their stunts when they go to these ICE detention centers telling Americans how bad Trump is. That's actually what's being back channeled. I'm not saying Trump is any saint, but what they're essentially saying is we want open borders. So I think we need to talk a lot more about how these bishops who claim they're not racist really are when they're taking billions of dollars for the open borders.
I am so infuriated by this because having worked with Catholic Charities when I was general counsel at the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services, they know what they did at the border is criminal and negligent. And we now know that there were 450,000, almost 500,000 children that went missing. Unaccompanied alien children went missing. And now the Trump administration is trying to find them. And by the way, one of the main grantees to do those placement in the dump and run network that I call that the Catholic Charities ran was Catholic Charities. And
That's
now
right.
this is what the government has found out. Though some of those children, I think they found something like 60,000. Some of those children ended up dead. Some of those children were raped and trafficked and living with sexual offenders. Some of their sponsors were sexual offenders. Do you know that Catholic Charities, knowing what is required of them when they were handling foster children, so they know this business inside and out.
Yeah, here's the story.
That's right.
You're even referring to 60,000 migrant children found by the Trump administration. Tom Homan, who's the border czar, who's actually a Catholic, he was on Arroyo's program last week, demanding or letting the viewers know of what was actually going on here, sex trafficking, etc. But also the fact that the bishops did not even reach out to him or the administration to talk about this issue. So they jumped on this at the USCCB's fall assembly, obviously with the support fully of Prevost, who's working with Bishop Seitz down in El Paso. Bishop Seitz, he's as liberal as they come. He went to the BLM rally in 2020 with a face mask and everything, kneeling down, and he wrote an article for America Magazine in 2020, right before the election, praising Joe Biden for how he wants to help the middle class. I mean, they are fully in bed, coming into the last hour, 11th hour, right before the midterms are starting to ratchet up, and they want to prevent a majority, it seems to me, in the Congress for those who want to actually take action on this issue.
And that word sponsor that you use, Liz, that is so key because these kids have been brought. Well, many of these kids have been found. They found 30,000 of them. Many of them are dead. And many of them are in the hands of these sponsors that were either killers or traffickers or labor traffickers to these children. And so Catholic Charities at the border, they kept saying to the people asking them, where are you sending these kids? They said, oh, we're sending them to the sponsors. Well, that sounds like a pretty professional word. Now we know several years later that those sponsors were traffickers and people that brought them into labor slavery. And now many of these kids are actually dead. So how come no one has called them on this? For every person brought across the border, the cartels take $5,000 a head. Well, the U.S. bishops got $2.3 billion for all these people brought across the borders. Well, why are you sending families in minivans right across the border at El Paso? Oh, well, don't worry. They're going to sponsors. Well, now we know these sponsors are raping kids and killing them. Look, so who's the two people making the money on this? Cartels, Mexican cartels that are satanic, and the United States bishops. That's not an exaggeration. You can find the facts on this. CNN even tweeted how this new Bishop Hicks is totally for open borders.
Look, this is what we know from the Office of Inspector General that examined the unaccompanied minor children program, which was largely run by Catholic Charities. They stopped doing criminal background checks of these sponsors. These children had little Post-it notes with an address, probably put on by the cartel members. They delivered these children to a sponsor who they didn't know. They didn't examine the home. They didn't do a background check of the people in the home. They did no DNA testing. They did no follow-up to see if the child was being fed in school, went to the doctor, nothing. And then what happened is the Biden administration created a hotline. They got 65,000 calls for help. This is where a hotline number that was given to the sponsors or to the children, and nobody answered the call. 65,000 calls for help. And this is a situation that was fostered by the cooperation of Catholic Charities, which, in the old days had a fairly good reputation. They have participated and facilitated in human trafficking, and they know better. They know what is required to check out a sponsor: a background check, 6 weeks of training, an inspection of every single room in the house, follow-up visits that are unannounced. They did none of that. And these are children from about 170 countries. Virtually none of the children speak English. They have no parent, no guardian. They are thrown into a home that they don't even know the person. It's just unimaginable. And Americans are going to be paying the price for decades as a result of this criminal operation. And it's a personal tragedy for the children, but for society as a whole, that is going to have all these damaged children who were abused and used by cartels in the United States and predators. It's a nightmare. I can't even imagine.
So let's tie Father Frank Pavone in. I don't know if you've already talked about this, but let's be honest. He was put on a shelf precisely because he was pro-life. So here you have him, quote unquote, laicized. And I know he wasn't perfect in his priesthood. I know him in real life. There's a couple little dings against him. Nothing worth putting him on the shelf. Nothing as bad as like Kissy Fernandez has ever done. I can tell you that, knowing Father Frank Pavone. So here you have someone who defends children, who's quote unquote laicized. And then you have the bishops getting paid billions to traffic children across the border who are raped. What's the pattern we're starting to see here? And just so people know, I didn't just get to the most extreme, like, oh, I'm bitter about my diocese, or I'm bitter I'm not in parish life or something. I'll tell you a quick story. Liz just mentioned 170 countries of kids coming across the border. She's absolutely right. About 6 years ago, Complicit Clergy put out a video with people like Jesse Romero and Father Altman on the border. They're interviewing Catholic Charities, putting kids into minivans that are sent away to these quote unquote sponsors all across the nation. So 170 kids. Who did that? Did I just do that? Well, anyway, I don't know where that came from. I did not do that. 170 kids coming into the country, sent all over the nation. And then I thought that video 6 years ago was so extreme, claiming the bishops were participating in trafficking. I took it off my first I put it on my Telegram channel, then I took it off because I thought, you know what? I'm going to answer to God for every accusation I make against the U.S. bishops, even though I don't like them. I'm not going to go to hell for a false accusation. So within 30 seconds of putting it on my Telegram channel, I deleted it because I thought there's no way it's true. I then talked to Father Altman in person. I talked to Jesse Romero at his house. I said, was that video put up by Complicit Clergy? Was that real? They both said it's absolutely real. Everything in it was real. We were there at the border. They were bringing kids across the border. Catholic Charities was putting them in vans, sending them to God knows where. And I don't take God's name in vain. I don't mean that as a violation of the second commandment. I mean, literally, God knows where. Nobody knew where these kids were going. So me, as a man who never got married, I see these kids. I've offered mass on 5 or 6 continents. I see these people as my spiritual children. So am I mad? Yes, I'm extremely angry. People look at people like Liz and me, oh, you must be really angry. Yeah, I'm really angry that there are kids being trafficked and raped and the bishops are making money on it.
Father and Liz, I want to ask another topic before we get too late in the evening. And thank you for being here, both of you. You're time is obviously very precious and valuable. I've interviewed Monsignor Coronado Orozco several times already, and he's right on top of this target as well. We're talking about the abuse of children, etc. And he's been talking about how when he was in Peru, Prevost, when he was bishop, covered up for his friend Lute by not adequately addressing the abuse that he was himself committing. Have you paid attention to that story? Do you think we're going to learn more about this in 2026? What else is going to come out about Prevost's history next? It doesn't seem there's anything good in his past.
Well, I would just a couple things. I have been following the case, the cover up. And by the way, the victim herself said that Prevost, who she met with, his investigation was a joke,
right?
A joke, quote unquote, that it was not conducted. He sent her off to the civil authorities, knowing, I'm sure, that the statute of limitations had passed and that there would be no ability to prosecute this guy. Right. Not only that, but this is, here we are in 2025, the conclave. You would think that the most important vetting element is to ensure that the new pope has a clean record in protecting children and not covering up. There's also 2 cases in Chicago where Prevost was involved, and that there was a cover up, moving a priest and putting him in a location, a really bad priest, putting him in a location after taking him out of ministry. And he was right next door to a school, and right, next door to a daycare. And actually this Father Lute, I think it's important to note, Father Lute, although there was an admission that he said he did what he did, and there were 2 other girls involved who he abused, he was not taken out of ministry. He was just he was told he could say mass, but that he could not hear confession. I mean, have we not learned anything from the Dallas Charter, from 30 years of $8 billion being spent? And Prevost is an American. He should know full well the responsibility and the care with respect to not only investigating thoroughly, protecting children when it comes to their attention that there's a predator in the midst. I mean, it's just like we're going 10 steps back. And, it's just the Peru case needs to be fully vetted. We need to see the file that is in the Vatican on Lute. We have to demand and find out why he didn't get a canonical trial in the Vatican. And so there's no information that ever came out about his conduct. He was simply laicized, which, as she said, the victim said, she was led to believe that this was a punishment. And then she certainly realized that, in fact, he was given a free pass. So it's the same. It's what they did with McCarrick. The truth never comes out. And, I'm getting really tired of this. And Leo needs to answer for what happened in Peru, what happened in Chicago, and to open up the files in the Vatican.
So Monsignor Coronado, he actually taught me canon law here in Denver at St. John Vianney Seminary in the Archdiocese of Denver about 20 years ago. So I know him in real life. I think I introduced him to the 2 of you digitally. And, there's, like I said about Father Frank Pavone, there's no such thing as a perfect priest except for Jesus Christ, of course, right? And so I don't know what people are trying to dig up on him and his past or whatever else, but I do know, and this is public, this isn't revealing anything private, I do know that he canonically represented Anna Maria Quispe, and the Vatican paid through the diocese in Chiclayo these 2 girls who were harmed by a priest $150,000 3 days prior to the May conclave. Now that's very interesting timing. Now, this was all public news that I put up on Twitter in May of 2025 this year. And everyone told me to be quiet because you're just supposed to pay, pray, obey. And hey, he's going to be better than Francis. So just shut up and accept it. Wait a minute. why was there a $150,000 payout 3 days before the conclave started? Could it be they actually knew who they were going to elect? That's just a very strange timing, considering the abuse happened, if I remember correctly, a couple years prior. Can someone explain the timeline to me? You know, people always get mad at me saying, you're imposing intentions on people. No, I'm not. I'm just telling you the facts. So I'm not going to ascribe intention to anybody, but maybe someone can explain the facts to me, why there was a payout for abuse in this obscure backwoods Peruvian diocese 3 days before the May conclave started. Very mysterious to me.
Yeah. Even Monsignor Coronado says he believed even at least 2 years before the conclave that Prevost was starting to be shielded, because this was when he was starting to speak out more himself. And then that's when he sort of ran into a buzzsaw and they said, you know, you can't keep doing this. So it seems that he was maybe even chosen well before the conclave, not just to mention what you're referring to there, though.
No, Coronado told me he was chosen 2 years prior by the United Nations. Again, can I prove that? Nope. But Coronado is someone who knows me in real life and Prevost in real life. We're not talking about internet connection. So that's very interesting that a Peruvian Augustinian who knows me in real life and Prevost in real life tells us the United Nations had him planned while Bergoglio was still alive.
Well, it doesn't surprise me that they would choose, you know, someone like that, because he's a smooth operator. He's playing the globalist politician's game. You know, he's blessing glaciers. He's out there supporting open borders. And it's funny. I just read an article. Actually, EWTN did a poll with Real Clear Politics, and they found that the majority of Catholics in the United States, the devout ones, more than 55%, support deportations, and they support the death penalty. Two major things that this Vatican is completely the opposite on. So there's this growing fissure between the most devout Catholics and their increasingly liberalized shepherds who just are totally out to lunch and doing the bidding of the global deep state.
And I think it's important to remember that long ago, Leo was a fervent supporter of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which are contraception, which are abortion, which is depopulation, which is all sorts of gender ideology, advocacy. I mean, this is, he has said it on the record. And so we need to, first of all, for the sake of the victims, get to the bottom of this case and find out why this priest friend of Prevost was laicized and not tried as you know, canon. We know canon law was thrown out the window with Bergoglio. But here it is. Here we go again on one of the most important issues to the American Catholic Church. And, you know, frankly, how many billions do they have to spend, you know, on their own abusive criminal behavior in covering up these scandals? How many millions more Catholics have to leave the church because of this behavior? And yet, you know, nothing got, and we should be screaming from the rooftops about this case and other cases.
To quick clarify, I know he wasn't laicized; he was dispensed from clerical duties. So technically, I guess he's still a priest. But this is the sort of the cheap way out to let someone off the hook really easily. But in any case,
I have a couple quick thoughts. So, you know, I studied philosophy under Dr. Peter Kraft at Boston College. I didn't get a degree in philosophy, but I studied a few classes under him. And he had a funny line. He would say, America is a country of Indians ruled by Swedes. What he meant by that is India is the most religious nation, at least by numbers of people that practice a faith, any faith. And Sweden is apparently the least religious. So he would say America is a nation of Indians ruled by Swedes. You can almost say that about the laity versus the Catholic Church. I'm just saying that to your point, Stephen, about how many Catholic laity have turned their backs on these open border policies, and yet the bishops keep hammering away. So then the laity said, well, maybe we shouldn't give too much money. The bishops don't care. They're getting so much money from the government. Well, this is why they put Leo in there, to put pressure on the bishops, to put pressure on Trump so they can get their money back. That's the whole thing. But they don't need the money of the little blue collar people that are out, you know, putting $10 in the hat every week. They need the money from the government again. Liz and I just spoke at the LifeSite News Rome Forum, and she had a whole presentation. It was brilliant on the Agenda 2030. And I speak Spanish, so I found secular news sites quoting Prevost as bishop down in Chiclayo several years ago, promoting Agenda 2030. Okay, what is Agenda 2030? It is a global sterilization and contraception plan. So he's down there. Everyone calls him a missionary to Peru, and yet we have public documents. This isn't from rad-trad sites. It's not from Sedevacantist sites. It's not from the Diamond Brothers. These are from regular South American news sites explaining that he supported Agenda 2030, again, a global sterilization and contraception program. Mm-hmm. How is that okay? And it's just like, any bishop can go to one pro-life dinner a year. Does that actually make him pro-life? No. And this is where we have to see past this superficial, my bishop said a neat phrase against abortion, and he says one every 3 months. That's not enough. If you are fighting for the trafficking of children and you're laicizing priests, good priests like Father Frank Pavone, who, by the way, isn't even a traditionalist, then you're not really pro-life.
Well, it even gets to your point, Father, about this new New York bishop coming in. I mean, some have said he's friendly to the Latin Mass over in Joliet. The question I always have is, well, is he a modernist or is he not a modernist? I mean, you can give away these sorts of dispensations left and right, but he's going to keep the revolution going, at the end of the day.
Well, yeah, and I think the important thing for people to realize is that the globalists are moving forward with Agenda 2030, and their partner has been the Vatican every step of the way, with Francis signing on to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, with the Vatican supporting the Paris Climate Treaty. And I would encourage people to read about not only the Sustainable Development Goals, but also the targets. And what it is in reality, it's utopia on earth. See, they promise you utopia, literally eliminate poverty, eliminate ignorance, perfect health, total equalization of the sexes, equality for all. It is utopia on earth, and nobody puts their feet to the fire. And what it requires is this mass depopulation program, which is underway as we speak. And people just like, oh, I don't want to bother about the UN. It doesn't impact my life. It is absolutely essential that Catholics stand in opposition to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And, it's always, my Protestant friend says it was always the Catholic Church that was the obstacle to communism, was the obstacle to globalism, that fought the bad guys. We could always rely on the Catholics to do the tough work, the heavy lifting. Well, that's changed now. And so it falls on the laity. We have to be the ones who are the troops on the ground, fighting these social battles, fighting modernism in the church. And I really believe this. I think the tragedy of Bergoglio and now Leo, it can be turned into something positive, because it can force you in these dark days to understand your faith better, to realize that we can't rely on the bishops. We must fight these battles ourselves. Let me tell you, the globalists are deeply afraid of the pro-life movement, because they know the fervor there. And they know that if the pro-life movement goes global, their global depopulation agenda is over. And so we hold the keys. And one thing I think it's important to say tonight, because, we're always running on the hierarchy. There are thousands and thousands of good, holy priests in America fighting the good fight, working to the bone. Their bishops don't have their back. It's been, not what they bargained for. They're bringing the faith to people, masses, sacraments. They need our support, because it's, we think we're being put upon by the bishops. Personally, my experience is that, You know, there's so many great priests there. I was at mass. I was telling Father, I was at mass today with a priest from the Archdiocese of Chicago who just retired. This guy, he should be Cardinal of New York City. He should be Cardinal. Smart, holy, tremendous education, training, good holy priest. And yet he was discarded because he didn't play the game with the higher ups. And so he was marginalized. I mean, it breaks my heart. I mean, we're lucky enough to have him, as our priest, but the church as itself, the leaders are not going to be able to won't lead us on the right path. So it's going to be us and we got to stop, whining about it and just fight the fight.
And this is why we can't defend the people doing evil. I mean, I know there's a lot of traditionalists out there that Liz and I were talking on the phone today. Maybe she mentioned it on your podcast today, but we really came to the conclusion people are just dealing with Stockholm syndrome, like maybe mom's new boyfriend isn't going to beat me as much as the last boyfriend. Maybe Prevost isn't going to beat the trads as much as Bergoglio, the last boyfriend, right? This is how they see it. And so even though I've been very mad at Trad Inc., that's my most charitable interpretation of they're just like, they have to believe in something. Okay, I get it. But then, do you think, I'm going to go dorky Lord of the Rings analogy here, like everyone expects a traditional priest to do, but you don't have to go fight the ring wraiths or whatever, but you can't go defend them. You can't deny the obvious. There's a lot of different conclusions on the validity of church versus anti-church, pope versus anti-pope. There's a lot of different opinions. However, you can't be out there denying evidence of what is actually happening, what is actually being said, what's happening with the open borders, what's happening with even small things like Leo bringing in 2 gay men from Chicago to run the restaurant at Castle Gandolfo. What is that? How do we not talk about that every day? If Archbishop Vigano had become Pope and brought in 2 gay men to run a kitchen in Gandolfo, you can be sure Michael Matt would be like challenging him every week on that. Yeah. What is this spell on the world that an ultra leftist can come in and Trading doesn't challenge them? It's absolutely bananas. But to Liz's point, why we have to fight, when Sam and Frodo brought the ring to Mordor, they didn't know how many other factors were happening, how many other forces in the universe were. They just had their part. Now, their part was extremely important, of course, but there was a lot of other people doing their part. So, do you know if you're just praying in Middle Earth or you're actually the one with the ring? I don't really know. You probably don't know, but you can't strategize. You have to just do the right thing without strategizing, because God's eventually going to take care of this. However, he's only going to take care of it if we're honest, if we're courageous, if we don't make peace with the enemy, if we don't do Faustinian bargains with the very people Our Lady of Fatima warned against, namely the Marxists. So the point is, you don't have to come to the same conclusion on validity, but you can't be doing damage control and interference for the modernists who are squatting in the Vatican or the chanceries, just so you can keep your Latin Mass. You actually endanger your soul if you do that.
Yeah. Very well said. Totally agree. I know it's been over almost an hour with both of you. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a great privilege talking to you both. And thank you for coming on. I wish you all both a happy holidays and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And hopefully we'll do this again at some point in the future.
Merry Christmas, Stephen, and congratulations on the podcast. Keep it going.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Happy Advent. Merry Christmas.
Bye-bye. Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us. We still got another 2 more guests coming up. I know you're all very rambunctious for our next 2 guests coming on. We have Dave Riley and American Reform. Thanks for sticking through all this. Appreciate it. And we'll get to the next part of the show in just a moment. But again, put your comments in the chat. I'll do my best to monitor them, get them up on the screen as best as I can. I want to shift now lastly to our last subject for the evening. Again, thanks for being here. It's this year in review Christmas episode. It's been a great privilege having you all with us today. I see we're over 500 viewers. I think that's where we're at statistically. So this is pretty great for a Friday night. We'll keep doing these in the new year if you like it. If you don't, let me know. I can totally change up the format. I appreciate the comments. We're doing our best here to get people who are available on the program. Friday night before Christmas is always difficult. So if anybody of you have connections and ideas with potential guests, feel free to let me know. We're doing our best here again to make the connections that we have to get the guests on that we do. And we're appreciative for anyone who takes time to come and talk to us. And if you're dissatisfied with that, well, you can start your own show if you want. So, but I really appreciate you, Seti Picante. Appreciate the super chat. We'll put that up here. So I appreciate your time and your efforts as well. Watched your show last night. I thought it was pretty good. So I hope you can come on a show next year early on. We'll do a show on whatever you really want. Whatever you want. Just no puppets. You got to promise me that. So we got to have the real Seti Picante. All right, it's garbage then. That's fine. I'm just trying to be nice. So in any case, we're ready for our next guest. Two guys who have been crushing it lately in the area of coming on, talking about the Red Sea pedestrians and the conservative movement. Our favorites, Dave Riley and American Reform. Gentlemen, welcome.
Hi, Stephen. Thank you so much for having me on.
It's a pleasure to be on with you guys. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Yeah, there's nothing to talk about, so we can just sit here in silence if you want. I mean, my gosh, where to start? I mean, I think let's start with the Shapiro speech at APAC, or not APAC. that was actually an accident. TPUSA, basically the same thing, right? I mean, did you guys watch this at all? I mean, he was dunking on Tucker Carlson basically and trying to cancel him, which is classic Shapiro behavior these days. I mean, what do you guys think of this speech here and this event actually?
Dave, you go ahead and then I'll go in.
Maybe I'll play it here. Let me just play it. So people know.
The truth. If we agree with the guest, that's fine, but we should own it.
It's fine.
So, for example, if you host a Hitler apologist, Nazi-loving, anti-American piece of refuse like Nick Fuentes, the Nick Fuentes who said that the vice president of the United States is a, quote, fat gay race traitor married to a Jeet. The person who said that Charlie Kirk was a, quote, retarded idiot. The person who said, and pardon my language here, it's his quote, that he, quote... I don't know if he's going to swear, so I got to cut it off there. But yeah. What do you make of this performance? I mean, come on.
It's really odd. I mean, like, for sure, the Barry Weisses of the world...
she loved it. She promoted it on Twitter.
Vins and all of these types of people, they're going to love this speech. But frankly, I kind of viewed it as more of a crash out, to be honest. I mean... we just had the assassination of Charlie Kirk. This is like the first America Fest since then. And Ben Shapiro gets on stage to engage in like petty infighting and to engage in cancel culture. And it just seemed like the exact antithesis of what Charlie would have done. It seemed inappropriate, again, to be, done in this tit for tat way where first you have Ben Shapiro speaking, then you have Tucker Carlson speaking. Why not? Have a debate. Why not have a dialogue? But these people don't want debate. They don't want dialogue. They're totalitarians, and they want their rule. They want the rule of Antichrist to reign supreme, and they want to be the ones to choose who can exercise their right to freedom of speech in this country. And so, the thing that's hard to gauge is, the audience reaction, right? Like we heard a little bit of booing there when he brought Tucker Carlson up. But then when you watch Tucker Carlson's speech, was the applause a little lackluster? So it's difficult to kind of gauge where the audience is at. But frankly, I thought that the Ben Shapiro thing was low on the one hand, but at the other hand, it's beneficial because it's proving exactly what those of us on the right, the dissident right, whatever you want to call it, it's proving us correct. These people are going mask off. They're showing us their true face and what they really think about America. They're co-Americans or whatever. And so I think that this is good as far as it goes to wake people up to the reality of what's been going on in the conservative movement for the past few years.
Mm-hmm. Reform.
I would agree with that, especially in regard to the effect it's going to have, because it's going to increase the division, which is not necessarily a bad thing. The problem I have with it is that the response of many people to that speech, because what Shapiro was outlining were very legitimate principles. Yes, people that are dangerous should be canceled. They should be deplatformed. And I agree with that entirely. The problem is that he's a Jewish liberal, and he's the one wanting to police the ideas that are being talked about at this conference. Now, Shapiro it's a little bit interesting because Shapiro is a liberal, a classical liberal, but oftentimes he lets his Jewish identity and his supremacism get in the way of that. And so moments like this, he's very candid, and he doesn't want true patriots, Christians, real Christians who are Catholics, people that are actually on the right. And that's the problem with Tucker's speech. It was completely feckless because he made appeals to liberalism. He said, well, we have a right to free speech. That equates his views with Shapiro's views. Shapiro is a Talmudic Jew. He has no place in American politics. And obviously nothing should be done to him that is violent, or there should be no action taken against him that is on private authority or anything like that. But the right needs to really find itself and say, no, we have standards. It's Christianity, it's orthodoxy. And if you depart from us in the doctrinal order, we're not going to tolerate that, because ultimately these political questions are connected to moral questions, which are informed by religious principles. So that's the integral response that was absent, and that's turning point. But that's where I'm hoping a lot of people that are on our side of things see what Shapiro is saying, and they're all legitimate principles. He does want to cancel bad people, and it's for their own good. He would probably say it's medicinal too, as a corrective principle. We want the same thing. We're just informed by different standards.
Sure. And just to jump in there, you had a post earlier today, American Reform, calling the First Amendment an abomination. And frankly, I kind of agree with that, because we're kind of under this illusion that in America we have freedom of speech, and that the best idea will win, and that the truth naturally will win in the free marketplace of ideas. But that is just simply not how the world works. We have always had censorship in every culture, in every region, in every time in world history. The question is, who is doing the censoring and why? The Vatican used to have a robust index of forbidden books, where even if one line in a long book contained error, it would be condemned and it would not be allowed to be published. And for the very real effect that, if a soul is led to error, they go to hell. And the salvation of souls is like the highest principle. And we want people to save their souls. We want people to go to heaven. And so we need to prohibit bad ideas. But the problem comes in with who's in charge, right? So like in Bolshevik Russia, they were anti-Christ, and their censorship was anti-Christ. And frankly, in America, with who's in charge of the government, the people cozying up to the administration, be it the Anti-Defamation League, the Southern Poverty Law Center, Canary Mission, or Betar, or one of these NGO Red Sea Pedestrian International groups, right? These are the people that want to choose. And if they are given the ability to choose, they will censor Christ. They will prohibit the gospel from being spread. It'll be 1 Thessalonians 2, 14 through 16 all over again.
There was a video of Jonathan Greenblatt that went viral just in the last 24 hours. And I'm trying to find it feverishly as I'm talking to you guys. It was a clip of him. Greenblatt's the head of the ADL. And it was him admitting that the 7 largest pro-Zionist groups on the planet routinely get together and speak together. And I didn't tweet it yet because I got to find the clip again. But this is the. Do you have it?
I just sent it to you in your DMs. Yeah.
Yeah, good. I mean, this is the office of the Inquisition for the global deep state, and this is what. Great, perfect, Dave. I'll put this up here. I'll play it, and then we can comment about exactly what you're kind of referring to. So, Greenblatt, ADL head. Yeah.
Now, just last week, leaders of the world's 7 largest Jewish communities convened in Australia as part of the 2025 J7 summit. This is a summit organized by ADL as part of the J7 task force to combat anti-Semitism.
Yeah, so I mean, they're just blatantly admitting here what we're trying to say is that there's an undue influence of Zionist and Jewish organizations in American politics. and that they're flexing their muscles left, right, and center, and most recently, at the White House with President Trump basically admitting that he's bribed by Miriam Adelson to the tune of $250 million. I mean, I'll bring that up too.
And real quick, if we touch on the last point, I want to build off of what Dave was saying, because he's right that the political right should not be allergic to censorship. And Stephen, obviously, you know this, and the popes have treated this. Pope Leo XIII, in his encyclical Libertas, he talked about a legitimate freedom of speech and then an illegitimate kind. And so in the realm of doctrine, in the realm of religion and morals, we cannot allow certain errors to spread. They're actually highly dangerous. And just like we punish murderers who kill the body, how much more so should we how much more so should we punish people that are spreading opinions that are blasphemous, or they're spreading moral error? And so it's the same principle there. But in things that are doubtful, of course, there is a legitimate freedom of speech. There shouldn't be censorship for everything, but certain things do need to be censored, and it has to be vigorous. And it is funny, just the meeting where they were talking about the conspiring, and I suppose that's what happens behind closed doors more than we're probably cued into. So it is kind of good to see them. They're coordinating behind the scenes, and it happens out in the scenes too.
Yeah.
Well, so Shapiro has been sort of tapped, obviously, you know, with the passing of Kirk. It seems he's being super amplified to occupy that space. And, you know, for all the things that Kirk, you know, did that was bad, it does seem to me that the last, you know, month or two of his life, he was very much considering the faith, and he was waffling a bit on the Zionist question. And so it seems, you know, this speech at this event, which originally Shapiro was never invited to this event. This was the one that Charlie said, I'm inviting Carlson no matter what. And with Barry Weiss amplifying him, and Barry Weiss herself taking over for CBS, thanks to Paramount being bought by, who's the millionaire guy? Larry Ellison, is that it? You know, so that they are, you know, coalescing and making sure that, you know, their presence is not going anywhere. And, you know, Shapiro wants to be the face of the conservative movement. It's just pretty awful development, if you ask me, because he's the last thing that was needed right now in that space, at least.
Well, let me say, go ahead. Okay, let me just propose one thing, because I agree with what you're saying, Stephen. The thing is that there is a very obvious constellation that has formed and is now growing, and you see Shapiro is aligned with Joshua Hammer, is aligned with Barry Weiss, is aligned with all of the usual suspects, and they're working in concert, promoting one another and pushing this message. The thing that I'm interested in, and I'm interested to hear your guys' opinions, I'm willing to say they can have conservatism. Let's make a real alternative and give people an actual choice. They can define conservatism as Judeo-Christianity and liberalism and American liberalism, and they can have their conservative project and say, we're going to make a Christian project, or we're going to make a right-wing project. And that way there's a clear distinction. And sure, let Shapiro be the head of that and give people, white Christians, Americans, patriots, and they don't even have to be white. They can be Asian or black and anything. Let them have a real choice and then see what they choose. That's my idea. I know some people probably disagree with that, but I'd be curious to hear what you guys have to say about that.
I mean, I was just sorry, I've got my heater going, so there's going to be a little bit of background noise. My bad. I forgot to turn it off before I went live. But what I was going to say is, you know, on the one hand, it kind of looks like chutzpah when, and it is chutzpah when Ben Shapiro gets up and kind of, you know, claims that this is our conservative movement. And you'll hear the same thing from Ben Shapiro, or you hear from Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, Josh Hammer, and all these types of people. But to a certain extent, they are correct. The American conservative movement since, like, you know, the 1970s really has been controlled and dominated by the Red Sea pedestrians. You know, they're the ones that formed it. When you look back at who Ronald Reagan's campaign manager, Arthur Finkelstein, right? Like, this is the guy that took abortion and polarized the issue, turning it into a Republican versus Democrat thing, right? Like, he was able to successfully box the Democrats in as the pro-abortion party, which then meant that the Republican Party is the pro-life party. So essentially, if you are, traditionally conservative when it comes to the social stuff, but maybe more aligned with, let's say, Leo the 13th economically, which I think in modern parlance, that would be viewed as a little bit to the left, right? I mean, the idea of anti-capitalism, anti-communism, condemning both of them as materialist ideologies where people are viewed as economic units of input and output that are completely interchangeable with one another, right? It would take a person like that and it forces them into the Republican Party because they morally can't go along with abortion, right? So there's this binary, this dichotomy, think, light switch brain, black and white thinking that has really infected American politics. And we are, I think, hopefully coming to the other side of that. Some of us might be understanding that there's a little bit more nuance. I mean, not with the abortion issue, obviously, but that there's more nuance here, right? That like capitalism isn't perfect, that it's actually prone to abuse, that it is inherently usurious. And it concentrates power and wealth in the top 10, top 1% of society. And so, I'm hopeful that maybe that there is something that can go on. But when these people get up on stage and say, oh, this is, our conservative movement, to a certain degree, they're right. It is. The conservative movement has been cucked, fake and gay for a very, very long time. And it needs to change. And I just had a couple of phone calls, with some political people. There's been a lot of talk and a lot of polling that actually shows that Americans are very interested in a third way. They're interested in a third party, but there are barriers to entry for that. Ballot access issues. It costs a lot of money to get in. And so, frankly, what I think really needs to happen, and we're kind of seeing this, it started in North Idaho a couple of years ago, but a revolution within the Republican Party, or I guess you could say a counter-revolution within the Republican Party to help bring our ideas and a Christian ethos and ethic to the Republican Party that hasn't been there, because Judeo-Christianity is not Christianity. It's a false thing. It's not real, even to the extent that people talk about Western civilization. Well, Israel is always getting out there. Bibi Netanyahu is getting up saying, we're the defenders of Western civilization. There is a difference between Western civilization and Christendom, right? There's a huge difference between that. And I think what we want to fight for, and what an increasing number of young American men want to fight for, is Christendom. We're done with the multiculturalism. We're done with the indifference, the liberty, and all of this nonsense. We want order. We want truth. And it's going to be a fight in the Republican Party, for better or for worse, at least until we have some other alternative.
Yeah, I haven't given too much thought to your proposal, Reform. I think, though, and I'm not sure you're saying abandon completely the conservative movement, because I think you can't have a let's say I'll bring up my tweet, what I wrote in response to what Shapiro was saying at a recent speech at the Heritage Foundation. And I'm not sure if you can see this, so I'll read it. Kelly's social teaching obliterates John Locke's political theory and what Ben Shapiro here says about free market capitalism, aka economic liberalism. Ben can easily be disproven. He was talking about how just libertarian economic stuff, but it can easily be disproven on every point he raises. Catholics need to rise up and shred him to pieces instead of collecting a paycheck from him like Walls, Knowles, and Frad do. We must remember we are Catholics first and not conservatives or Republicans, which are just labels designed to act as control mechanisms aimed at funneling us into spaces controlled by the enemy. To Dave's point there about how the conservative movement has become kosherized. And I think for that point alone, I did appreciate Carlson's pushback. I understand what he's trying to do at that speech, where he did push back against Shapiro, and basically said, hey, look, when did the right all of a sudden become the cancel police? And I think that's a fair thing to keep your opponents honest in their own arguments. So I think what Carlson did there was admirable, and I think what he's trying to do, I think, is admirable as well. So I'm not, I guess, one to draw as strict a line as maybe what you're saying there, American Reform. Some of those things, I'm not against what you're saying at all. I'm a complete integralist, Christ the King guy. But I think there is a way you can sort of retake the conservative movement, broadly speaking. I mean, yes, we know classical liberalism, John Lockeanism, that's not Catholic, but to operate as a sort of creative minority, to raise awareness. I mean, Shapiro at that event was asked by someone in the audience, what do you think of the USS Liberty? And he shot back with some snarky, awful question, impugning motives, whatever. And that just exposes himself more than anything else. So I think, there's still good ground to be made there. And I'm not sure if you have any thoughts on that, but that's what I think.
No, I do generally agree with a lot of what you said. And I think the point you made in that X post was really good, where we're Catholics first, it's integral, and it doesn't need any qualification of conservative. And I also sympathize too with not trying to burn it down or anything like that. But the big opportunity that I think I see, and increasingly young men are energized by this, it's something that's fundamentally positive, something that's fundamentally progressive. It's forward looking, because conservatism is defensive. I mean, you've already implicitly acknowledged the legitimacy of a different view. Why not just assert order, hierarchy, stability, Christianity, and make it positive? And so I think, to Dave's point, it is smart to work within the conservative movement, the mainstream conservative movement, but it's to be very strategic in how we go about that. And something like America First, that's something that a lot of people can get behind, and even certain centrists too, that on economic issues, they're much more closer to Catholic social teaching. And we know that capitalism in itself is not a vicious system, but it does tend towards abuse, and it's certainly not the ideal system. And so we have these great social encyclicals, particularly Pope Leo XIII and Pius XI and Quadragesimo Anno. We have this corporate, collective social organism that we can advance. And I think there would be a lot of people that are independent or more centrist that might be on board with that. That's America First. It doesn't need to be extreme or anything, but just very moderate, traditional, common sense. And yes, Christian, that has to be there too. But that's where I see a lot of excitement. At least it's on Twitter. You see it with online politics, but I think increasingly young men are asking, is there an alternative? Is there a third way?
There is something else that I want to kind of plug in here, or like an idea that I kind of want to throw out there. A couple of ideas. Number one being, you can kind of see what happened at Vatican II, and specifically in the wake of it, where the liberals, the modernists, they canceled the traditionalists, right? They threw us out. They were like, we don't want any part of this. And in turn, the Catholics, faithful Catholics that were attached to the traditional teachings of the church, to the traditional mass, they wound up leaving the church. Okay, maybe not leaving the church, right? Like, I don't think that the Lefebvrists are schismatic. I think that there's a lot of room for debate for sedevacantists or people that doubt the legitimacy of the papacy. I don't want to say that they're outside of the church, but I'll say that they are outside of the institutions that we see, right? They're outside of the Vatican, the Chancery. And by leaving the Republican Party, I am reminded in a way of what happened in the 70s and the 80s with traditional Catholics kind of leaving these institutions, leaving the physical buildings that were there, the parishes that were there. And if we did that, then who would be left? Who would be left in the Republican Party? It would literally just be the Ben Shapiros, the Mark Levins, the Josh Hammers, and they would have total control. And in a place like Idaho, that's 80% Republican, we're essentially a one-party state, that would give them total control. So what I would like to encourage people, especially people that are watching this podcast, is, I've got a very political background. I ran for school board. I ran for governor. I've been very involved with the Republican Party. And there is an opportunity here coming up in 2026. If I may, just for like a moment, kind of give an overview, because I feel like a lot of people don't know how the Republican Party actually functions, the mechanics of it. So in each county, there are precinct committee officers, precinct chair people that physically go door to door. They knock on their neighbors' doors. They hand them literature, and they usually stand for a vote. And that vote is going to be coming up in all of the primaries in 2026. I believe the one here in Idaho is going to be in May, I think May 19th, if memory serves correctly. But that is an opportunity for people that think like us, people on the Catholic side, to take a look at your location, your precinct, where you live, find out who your precinct chair is. Because there's a very high probability that it's vacant, because a lot of the flyover states, a lot of, Appalachia, coal country, the Rust Belt, people just are not as active. And the ones that are usually Zionists. So there's like a very high probability that you could run unopposed, get yourself on the local central committee, and then start trying to pass resolutions, start trying to get your candidates endorsed and elected in that way. And so that's when I say, to have a revolution in the Republican Party, that's the actual mechanics of how it would be done. Getting involved at the precinct level with your party to share Catholic social teaching and try your best to bring about the reign of Christ the King. And I think that there are coalitions, political coalitions that can be built. Obviously, we're all against ecumenism and coming together to worship with non-Catholics or the Eastern Orthodox. But when it comes to politics, if you look at the Reformed Protestants, I'm thinking of people like Joel Webbin, people like the Stone Choir guys, and then the Eastern Orthodox, when faced with a political situation or a political decision, 9 times out of 10, the traditional Catholics, the Eastern Orthodox, and the Reformed Protestants, we're all going to have the same mind on an issue. And so I do think that there is room for a coalition politically to be built in that realm. Now, it's a different story altogether when we're talking about intra-Catholic stuff. Obviously, we can't be getting together with these people at like mass or something like that. But anyway, just wanted to throw that out there for people that might not be aware of the mechanics of it. It's not really labor intensive to get on your central committee. It's usually 1 meeting a month, and you get to know your neighbors, and that's a very good thing.
Yeah, it's interesting where to move forward at, and I think we need to forget these labels. I mean, too many Catholics, especially Republican Party, classical liberalism, conservatism, etc. Like, again, those are just they are serious things. They exist. That's something that most people associate with. But the terms that the conservatives use, limited government, free speech, marketplace of ideas, etc. We don't need to use those things. We can create our own counter-revolutionary movement without borrowing or really leeching off that, and just say, hey, we're going to do this because we're Catholic. And like, whenever they use this label, like you said, Dave, I think Shapiro will say, oh, you're not conservative enough. You didn't join our movement enough. I don't care about conservatism. I have no connection to Ronald Reagan, all these intellectuals from the 60s, 70s, 80s, Leo Strauss, etc. I'm a Catholic trying to implement Catholic social teaching and to make this world more Christ-like. Conservatism is just their weapon they use to bludgeon us over the head and to say, if you're not more like us, then you're outside of it. Well, and so that's why I think it's like, well, okay, I don't necessarily think, again, like, let's just let them have that, but it's their way to infiltrate the space. And so I say, let's just infiltrate that space with their own principles and be Catholic. And then then you can build coalitions, etc. But, and I think you're great to mention Webbin there too. I think there's more people who are exhausted by this topic. Fatigue is real. Fatigue is real, and it's spreading amongst non-Catholics too, like on Twitter, etc. Jake Shields, Dan Bilzerian, people who aren't even like super close to the church. They're all seeing it. And so if we build that dichotomy, I think the dichotomy has to be Christ or chaos, as we've always known it. So we say that's our movement, because Ben Shapiro will dunk on Fuentes and others. He did this before. Ben Shapiro, he says, Nick Fuentes is anti-black, anti-Indian, anti-women. But I tweeted, yeah, but he didn't say he's not anti-Christ. He's not anti-Christ. Shapiro is anti-Christ. Barry Weiss, anti-Christ. Okay. Yes. That's the thing we have to make highlight for everyone to see. It's Christ or chaos. That's it.
And the real thing is that those are caricatures of him. Fundamentally, he's putting forward something that is positive. It is pro-Catholicism. It is pro-white. And it's not motivated by racial hatred or anything like that. But it is a recognition that America does have a distinct racial character. It has a history. And of course, Black people are citizens today. Asians are citizens today. But America has always been a white country. And so they need to have certain rights. They're a majority. and they need to be legally recognized and treated well. I mean, this is not crazy. In any other country, this is common sense. This is something that is taken for granted. You would never have to explain this in a country like Japan. And it's only because of the revolutionary last couple of decades that anything that I'm saying right now would be even considered controversial. It was all taken for granted. And so that's really what scares them. It's not that he's anti any of these things. It's that he's putting forward something that is positive. And so, and then going on to Stephen's point, I do like that, where letting them kind of have that label, because it is nebulous and it does allow them to get in. Well, why can a Jew not be in the conservative movement? Why is conservatism incompatible with Judaism? Well, that's a good question. I don't really think that the two are incompatible. I think they cohere very nicely. Yes. The problem is that there is a departure from orthodoxy, and that's the natural law. That's a political order based on the natural law and revelation and Catholic philosophy. So, and then the last point, there is coalition building that can be had. And I like how Dave pointed out that ecumenism is to be avoided. And so we can see that we're in very dire circumstances right now. In ordinary circumstances, you wouldn't build a political coalition with, say, Reformed Protestants or Eastern Orthodox, but it's an evil to be tolerated right now for the sake of some greater good or to avoid a greater evil. So those are the moral principles that are being involved there. And you have to be very careful not to foster indifferentism or anything like that. But as a purely political arrangement, I would argue that could work right now, and it even might be expedient.
Yeah. And it's interesting not to, I wouldn't want to misspeak or put words in anybody's mouth, but I did have the opportunity to spend a few months essentially living with His Excellency Bishop Tissier de Malaray back when he was in Chicago. And I got a lot of time one-on-one with him to be able to talk with him and pick his brain and ask questions. And I remember sitting down with him to talk about the idea of Catholic action and these types of political movements, political coalition building. And I was like, listen, what can we do? Because look, we're a tiny, small minority. Like even among Catholics in America, we're like, what, 1% that have their eyes open and their ears open, and we're seeing what's going on. How can we do this? And I asked him, is it possible? Is it licit? Am I allowed to work with non-Catholics for an end that is good on the natural level? And he said, yes. And even in the form of organizations, but to whatever degree possible, we should be making organizations that we control, that Catholics are at the head of, right? Like a political PAC or an action committee that's run by Catholics, but it's okay to have messaging that appeals to non-Catholics because, frankly, these two concepts of America first and Christ is King, right? Yes. That is enough of a dividing line to keep out the Antichrist, the spirit of Antichrist and the people of Antichrist, and so just food for thought, because I know among traditional, we are the worst when it comes to forming these Polish firing squads, you know what I mean? Where everybody gets together in a circle and we all pick our guns up and shoot at one another. The constant infighting between the Sedevacantists and the Lefevreists and the SSPX and the FSSP, it's like, you got to look at what the time and what the hour is. Sure, when we're talking about church things, get autistic and go for it. But when we're talking about the fate of our country and where we are in this decline, this revolution that has consumed the world, we have got to get scrappy, and we have got to put aside some petty differences in the political arena to try to make some sort of positive change.
Where is this going in the next year and a half? I mean, I know Fuentes launched or is launching a PAC. I just saw, talking about the Trump White House display with Miriam Adelson. He's cooked. That movement is completely, falling over. So he's given himself up totally. I know there's a lot of people who have been on my X account saying, well, why didn't you know he was a Zionist from the start? He tricked everybody. Where is this whole movement going? The Jewish lobby is not going to go down. They are not going to go down with the fight. In my view, if they lose, they're going to drag everybody else down with the Samson option, especially in the U.S. So I think there's big concerns there. Marjorie Taylor Greene just stepped down. Seems the only last sane person in Congress in some ways is Thomas Massey. I mean, what's going to happen in the midterms of the next year, 2028? What do you guys think?
The most important. Oh yeah, sorry. No. The most important thing is to realize where we're at right now, and the game is entirely rigged. And so when the game is entirely rigged, you don't continue to play. You stop, you abstain, you take yourself out of the play, and you go to the referee, you go to the administration, and you need to change the rules. And so the way you can exercise political power right now is by principled abstention. Ordinarily, Catholics do have a serious obligation to vote, but the stipulation is that there are worthy candidates by Catholic standards. So absent that worthy candidate, and it's a number of different conditions that have been outlined by moralists and Pope Pius XII, notably, there is no general obligation to partake when the candidate's program is not worthy. And so this is where it's very interesting. And in many cases, it might not be expedient to vote Republican. And so that's something I finally realized prior to 2024, because I had voted for Trump in 2016 and Trump in 2020. And this is before my conversion too. But then I started to rethink things and realize that actually you have the most amount of power when you say, no, I'm not going to vote Republican like slavishly. We actually need real demands to be met. And so to Dave's point, solidarity is the most important thing. If Catholics can get together, there are tens of millions of Catholics in the United States. A lot of them are nominal, not practicing. But if they can get behind a couple of very simple issues, they can exercise enormous power and say, if you don't criminalize the murder of unborn children, we do not vote, and we will not vote. And the Republican Party would evaporate. They would lose all of the white Christian men that vote for him and form their entire backbone. So a couple issues: mass immigration, no more foreign wars, and then pick a moral issue: divorce, probably abortion's easy, like a couple issues like that. And you say, these are non-negotiable. And the Jews are really intelligent in this way. They say that you need to support Israel. You need to clamp down on anti-Semitism. You need to censor Holocaust deniers and Nazis. They have this really intelligent strategy, and they get their demands met, and then they give money to the candidates. Yes. All these Christians, all these white people, they're so stupid because they vote Republican every single time, and they get sold out every 4 years. And then in 4 years come, and they're going to be sold J.D. Vance, and they're going to fall for it. And then they're going to realize that was wrong, and then they're going to do the exact same thing. So we need to take a playbook out of other groups and how they operate, and they have very real interests. And our interests are America first and Christ is King. And these are non-negotiable. And we can make certain compromises for political expediency, but I think that has to be the animating vision.
Yes. And, I want to touch on a couple of things here. Number one would be when it comes to the federal offices, president, vice president, perhaps your senator, your Republican, or your House of Representatives, congressperson, didn't we all go through 2020 together? We saw how they rigged the votes. We saw how this whole thing was done. I'm of the opinion more and more that our vote for president doesn't even matter. So to American Reform's point, abstention, the non-expedite, don't vote for these people. Don't vote for J.D. Vance. Don't vote for your Zionist congressman just because there's no one else to vote for. Sometimes it might take a little bit of pain, having a communist elected or something like that. Yeah, it would be tough. We would suffer, but it would make us stronger. It would strengthen our will. It would make the fight much easier to understand good and evil, as opposed to arguing over who's more conservative or whatever. But you've got to pay attention. Catholics need to pay attention to your local elections. We have 3 or 4 of them a year here in Idaho, where I live. You've got your library board, school board, water district, highway district, all of these types of things. And usually the locales are small enough that you can either find someone to run, you can run yourself, and the barrier to entry is like very low. So definitely stay engaged locally, vote locally, and don't get too hung up on like who's voting for president. But regardless of the political question, regardless of the Republican Party question or whatever, it's something I wanted to share and to talk about a little bit is at the parish level, and I don't know what your parishes are like. We've got an incredible one here in North Idaho, and things are really starting to take off for us, I think. But I used to live in Chicago. I went to mass out there. I would visit Kansas. There were all kinds of parties where the young people were getting together. There were mixers. People were meeting their wives and husbands and forming like business deals and all of this type of stuff. But then I just went back for the first time after like 6 years to Chicago last month, and there's nothing there anymore. There's nothing there anymore. It's like, yeah, you can show up to mass, but at Kansas, they've got like the Latin Novus Ordo for 2 out of 3 Sundays, as opposed to the traditional Latin mass. So and granted, a lot of this has to do with soupage, but he clamped down on the Latin mass, and then everybody scattered. They all went back to the Novus Ordo. The SSPX went from 2 masses on Sunday to 1 mass on Sunday. And the lay people have done absolutely nothing to network themselves together. And this is something that I just really want to drive home. I visited another church, the Holy Ghost in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I was just over there last weekend, and they had a great little coffee hour after mass, but there's really no community there. And so if you're listening to this, and especially if you're a younger man, you need to really go above and beyond and try as best as you can to facilitate the creation of social groups, clubs in your parish. They could be based around anything: gold and silver bugs, cigar smoking, pipe smoking, whatever the thing is. But just get a thing together where you get men from your parish once a week to get together and just hang out. It doesn't have to be expressly political, because if you can get 20 men in a room together once a week for 6 months, eventually something will happen. But we need our people on the traditional side to get serious about building businesses, building economic alliances, and especially to fortify our churches. We're going to need to build more schools. We need to build bigger churches. We need all of this kind of stuff. And frankly, we're going to need money for that. And the best way is for these young men to get together and form these kinds of economic bonds in the parish. We've been so atomized in this society, and atomized at the parish level. We used to have these ethnic parishes, and then after Vatican II, the ethnic parish kind of went the way of the dodo, and now we have ideological parishes, right? There's the liberal Novus Ordo, the conservative Novus Ordo, then the Latin Mass communities and all this kind of stuff. But I guess I just want to put it out there that we young men, I guess I'm not that young anymore, 36, but we need to step up and we need to rebuild the social fabric that has been rotted away, because we're on a weak back foot right now. And if we do that, if we build social capital, if we build fraternal networks, businesses, and economic unions between one another in the parish, then it matters less and less who the president is. It matters less and less who the Pope is. It matters less and less what's going on in the world. Because, if I've got a business and I'm selling widgets or whatever that everybody needs, right? Then everybody at the parish can patronize my business. Then someone else, do you see what I'm getting at? And you kind of start to build these parallel systems, parallel economies, where we don't have to visit Walmart. We don't have to visit Amazon. We can start relying on one another, because no one's coming to save us, and we've got to pick ourselves up. And I know it's hard, and I almost just said by my bootstraps. And so, but you see where I'm getting at it with this thing. I feel like there's so much division and so much infighting, that we need to really go out of our way to try to find our tribe at the parish and bring people together and rebuild that social fabric. And I think that's more important than voting. I think it's more important, frankly, than, you know, any political act that you can do. You know, that and becoming a saint, exercising moral virtue, you know, going to confession, trying to be a better person every day. You know, those things together is what will produce positive social change over the long run, regardless of who the president is or what flavor menorah they're lighting at the White House today.
Yeah, it was Pope Leo XIII who actually said, I forget which encyclical, that Catholics should prefer the company of other Catholics. And he was writing at a time when I think against ecumenism was starting to sort of make itself known. And so I think, you know, that is the thing. We have to patronize one another, because when we do that, we are really building up the church. You know, we're not giving our money to these banks and others which are owned by the enemy. And I think that's the good first step. I always have a friend who reminds me of that. He's in the paralegal world. And he says, you know, I'm in this industry, this money changing industry, and the people who run it are all in cahoots with one another, and they're all of a similar background. And he says, Catholics are so lame on this. And I agree totally with that. And so he's actually starting a fraternal nonprofit organization. And he's like the CEO. I love him. Dan, if you're watching, we got to have you on soon. And I know he's watching.
Bank, because this is something that, like, I just have this vision of, like, I love, was it St. Bernardini of Siena? He was involved with the Monte de Pieta, right? He was involved in fighting usury, fighting the money lenders and all of this kind of stuff. And he came up with a novel way to create credit, to create money that was outside of the pedestrian controlled, banking system. And I just cannot believe that for how long has it been? 50 years, 60 years that the traditional movement has come and existed. We don't have one bank. We don't have a St. Mary's Bank.
Yeah.
Or
credit unions. Do we have those yet? I mean, come
on. Something, because if we can kind of create a focal point for traditionalist Catholics of all stripes, where it's like, we are going to band together. And then when that bank makes money, it's being leveraged and used in a way that glorifies God, that promotes Christ the King. You know, we might be small, but I think if we were able to come together in these types of ways economically, I think that could snowball and do really good stuff. I just can't believe we don't have a bank.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. And the most important thing is stressing the social aspect of man, because we're built to live in society. And of course, we should be in communion with other Catholics and working together. And in addition to this financial, almost a parallel financial system, in concert with that, I think something that's very important is education, because in America, we have a big liberalism problem. And it's not only Novus Ordo, not only Catholics that go to the Novus Ordo, it's Catholics that go to the TLM too. It's across the board. Now, it's obviously way more apparent in Catholics that are going to the Novus Ordo, but there's a big liberalism problem, even among traditional Catholics, even among so-called traditional Catholics that are self-styled anti-liberals. They still have a problem. And a lot of that is just because the environment that we live in and our culture, it's so baked in. And it's like the old analogy of a fish swimming in water. He doesn't even recognize that water is around him. And so that's something that Bishop Williamson did a great job of. He was always keeping your conscience pricked for that, thinking about what is something that is it said? Is this a liberal notion? Is this a liberal idea? And the book that's really transformational in this way would be Liberalism is a Sin by Father Felix Isarda y Silvani. And as soon as you read that, you start to recognize in your life where you have these kind of liberal ideas. They might be liberal ideas, or it might just be a liberal tendency, a certain attitude. And when we come back to the economics too, making sure that you're patronizing Catholics and not, say, Muslims or Jews or liberals. That's another group too, because at the end of the day, you're giving your money to liberals, and objectively, no matter how sincere they are working against the interests of Christ the King and his social reign. And we need to be operating as a mystical body in the political sphere. And so I think that's something that's really important, is that we have this education, we get these ideas out here, and we're active fighting liberalism.
Amen.
I'll give you guys maybe 5 more minutes each. If you want to end on any topic you want, that's great. Feel free to riff, or you want to talk about another topic, let me know. But we're getting near the end, I think, of the show. I'm on here for about 2.5 hours. So thank you, everybody, for who's still with us in the chat. I know you guys are still fixated on debating certain topics there. I'm keeping an eye on it. I appreciate it, but that's all right. We appreciate you being here, and I appreciate your support and viewership. So Dave, whoever wants to take the floor, feel free, and then we'll close out the stream.
All right. Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of other things on my mind. You know, since the death of the murder, the assassination of Charlie Kirk, I've been kind of going back to the Spanish Civil War, and I've been reading a lot of books about that, specifically Warren Carroll's book. I think I got a copy right here. I think everybody should read it. It's called The Last Crusade by Warren Carroll. I think it's a really good book. There's also another one called The Catholic Martyrs of the Spanish Civil War. I just want to throw it out there that we need to be invoking these people. They fought Bolshevism. They fought liberalism. They fought the bankers, and they won. And so there are hundreds, thousands of great martyred saints from the Spanish Civil War that I feel like we are not appealing to as Americans. Most Americans aren't even aware that that battle took place, what the battle lines were, and what was going on. You know, and it's really incredible. There's a passage here in the Last Crusade by Warren Carroll about there was a building in Spain called the Alcazar, which was like a big headquarters, a military headquarters and an outpost. And one of the generals of the Carlist Raquette armies, he was occupying this place. The communists kidnapped his son. They called the general on the phone and said, "We will kill your son unless you surrender the Alcazar." And the general was like, "Prove it. Put him on the phone." And they put his son on the phone. And his son asked, "Dad, what can I do?" And his dad said, "You can die for Christ the King. You can die for your country, and you can, go to heaven and keep your head held high. So that's what I want you to do, son." And they took the phone from him, and they shot him. They killed him right there. But think of that conviction that had to have been had by both the father and the son to be able to lay down his life for his country, for his faith, for Jesus Christ the King, against liberalism and against communism. And I just feel like Americans are too ready to compromise. They are too ready to just roll over and play dead. We need to have that level of conviction. We need to be ready to die for our faith, no matter what. And so I feel like people should definitely read some of those books. And also, and I know I'm running low on time, but we've got to be very careful about the Opus Dei. Maybe we'll do another podcast about this, but everybody in Washington, D.C. that is a Catholic, including non-Catholics like Peter Thiel and others, they are all involved with this group Opus Dei. They run the Supreme Court. Marco Rubio, John Ratcliffe.
He's a proud member.
There you go. And so these people are a part of the problem. And I don't know if it's a matter of Catholic action where we need to get to Kevin Roberts from the Heritage Foundation and bring him to Jesus or what. But those are people that are placed in perfect spots to have a positive impact on the American social order. And they have compromised with groups like Chabad and these, menorah lighting people. So we've got to be very skeptical of them, and we have to see what we can do to bring them to our side, to the ancient truths of the Catholic faith, because without them, with these liberal, and they are, even though they're like leaders of the conservative movement, they are liberal Catholics, and they are going to be detrimental to our country's future unless something changes. So those are my closing thoughts.
Quick point on that. I mean, that pipeline comes through Princeton. It goes through Robert George, the School of American Jurisprudence or something like that. I know I'm flubbing the name, but I mean, he's plugged into there. Everyone in DC who's a bigwig Catholic, they're part of that. And it's, for sure. It's an Americanist version of the faith to make the faith like a step sister of the conservative movement, to Americanize it, to not make it a threat to the Republic, to just to put it, put it in the shelf there and make it safe and nice. But anyway, great point, Dave. I appreciate that.
No, that is really good insight. And I would wonder if there's any connection between Opus Dei and some of their designs and then this this burgeoning faction of they're styling themselves post-liberals. So Sohrab Ahmari, Gladden Papin, Patrick Deneen, Adrian Vermeule, and
now I know Gladden's an FSSP guy.
Yes, I think a lot of them are good Catholics, but I still think they have certain liberal sympathies. So I'm not trying to impugn them in any way, and they are very intelligent, and they do seem to beginning to marshal a real critique against liberalism, all of it. They still haven't looked into the American founding, because I've read a lot of their materials and I see them on Twitter, and they have these kind of these cherished ideals that they need to re-examine, but I think they might be capable of doing some good. And the final point, I just want to thank Stephen for having us on the program. This was excellent. This discussion was really interesting, and a lot of new ideas. We were kind of bouncing off one another, and I hope I wasn't misunderstood in telling people that they should be principled in their abstention, because I want them to be deeply political, to be even more involved in politics. The abstention is itself a political act, and it's for a reason. And so Dave was mentioning Catholic history. You look at Italian Catholics, for a period of time, there was a principle that was binding in conscience, and it was non-expedient. And it's not expedient in certain circumstances to participate in these liberal Masonic political orders and in that order, but you want to create your own order in parallel, or to convert or conquer that one. And so that's something that American Catholics, whether they're assisting at the traditional mass, whether they're assisting at the Novus Ordo, that needs to be on everyone's mind. And coalition building, that's extremely important. And so I'll end with that. And I want to thank Stephen again for having us on.
One more thing I forgot. On my podcast, The Backlash, sorry, I have to do a little cross promotion here. But on Monday, on my podcast, The Backlash, you can get to us at thebacklash.net. We're going to be having Father James Maudsley on. We're going to be discussing his new book, The Metaphysics of Love. We're going to be talking about Christmas and some of the stuff with the Pope and the political issues as well. So that'll be at 2 p.m. Eastern. At thebacklash.net, you can find our social medias. So I just wanted to plug that, because Father's been banned from X, and so for some people he's just fallen off the face of the earth. So if you follow Father Maudsley and you want to hear what he's got to say, this Monday will be a great time. Thank you again, Stephen.
Thank you both. Great conversation. I appreciate it. It's overdue that we're here discussing these things, and it's good to get it in before the new year, because I think next year, it's full go on all these topics. I think it's time overdue, and I think more people are seeing these issues for what they are. And so it's good to have a coalescence, especially among Catholics who are seeing this issue clearly. And it seems people in the comments are seeing it too. So we're glad that everybody who came tonight stayed. For those who did, congratulations. I wish I could, do something for you. I'll say an extra prayer for you. Thanks for the support. We are narrowing in on 8,000 subscribers here. That for us is a big deal. I know, Dave, you got a massive platform of your own, but we've only been around for 4 months, so give us a little time. We'll catch up, hopefully. But with guests and shows like this, we know it's possible to spread the truth. And this time, again, Christ or chaos. Christ is king. We know that. And those who are against him, as they've been since the time of his life, are not going to be successful. And so we pray that God will allow us to continue to be his instrument. That's the number one thing. So, and he's done that with you guys both. So thanks for being here. Thank you, everybody, for, again, in the comments, for supporting us. If you can make a year-end donation, that's always acceptable. It's greatly accepted and appreciated. If not, prayers are always welcome too. And we'll see you in the next year. Thanks to you guys for coming on, Dave and American Reform. It's been a pleasure. And we'll see you soon. And everybody else in the chat, thank you all again for being here. This has been a special episode of Trad Watch with Stephen Cox. Take care.